Welcome to another exciting episode on Cross Naruto. Today, we're exploring a captivating tale called What If Naruto Was the Primordial Egyptian Sun God Ra's Predecessor, the First Light Naruto x Isis x Bastet. Before we begin, if you enjoy our content, please support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It helps more than you know. And now, the story awaits. Chapter 1, The Awakening Light, Rasengan. Naruto's voice tore through the battlefield as his signature spiraling sphere of chakra crashed into his opponent. The impact sent shockwaves rippling across the valley, kicking up dust and debris in all directions. Blood pounded in his ears as he pushed forward, digging deep into his reserves of strength. This wasn't how the mission was supposed to go. What started as a simple reconnaissance had erupted into an all-out battle against rogue ninja with abilities he'd never encountered before. The rest of his team was scattered across the terrain, each fighting their own battles. "You can't win this, Uzumaki," his opponent growled, hands flashing through unfamiliar signs. "The gateway must open." Naruto wiped blood from his chin, crouching into a fighting stance. "I don't know what gateway you're talking about, but I'm not letting you hurt anyone else." The enemy ninja's eyes glowed with an unnatural purple light as he slammed his palms into the ground. Too late. The stars have aligned. The bridge between worlds is forming. The earth beneath Naruto's feet began to glow with intricate symbols that spiraled outward in concentric circles. He tried to jump away, but his body wouldn't respond. What the hell is this? Naruto struggled against the invisible force holding him in place. He reached for the Nine-Tails chakra, feeling the familiar burning energy surge through his system. The enemy ninja laughed. "The sacrifice has been accepted." "Sacrifice? I'm nobody's sacrifice." Naruto roared as the Nine-Tails chakra exploded around him in a golden aura. The seal beneath him pulsed in response, glowing brighter. "Perfect," the ninja whispered. "The power of the Nine-Tails will ensure the gateway stabilizes." Naruto felt a tugging sensation in his gut, like something was trying to pull him inside out. The world around him began to warp and distort. Through the haze, he spotted Sakura running toward him, her mouth moving in a silent scream. "Sakura-chan. Stay back." The light from the seal intensified until it was blinding. Naruto felt his body stretching, pulling, dissolving into particles of light. The last thing he saw was the enemy ninja's shocked expression as the seal's energy engulfed them both. "This wasn't supposed to happen," the ninja gasped. "You were supposed to be the key, not the traveler." Then everything went white. Sand. That was the first sensation Naruto registered as consciousness returned. Hot, coarse sand against his face and filtering through his fingers. The scorching heat of the sun beat down on his back with an intensity he'd never experienced before. "Ugh!" Naruto groaned, pushing himself up onto his knees. His head throbbed like he'd been on the receiving end of one of Sakura's punches. "Where am I?" He blinked against the harsh sunlight, taking in his surroundings. Desert stretched in every direction, golden sand dunes rolling like waves toward the horizon. The sky above was an impossible shade of blue, not a cloud in sight. "This definitely isn't the land of fire," he muttered, climbing to his feet. His body felt strange, lighter somehow, but also humming with unfamiliar energy. When he tried to access his chakra, instead of the usual controlled flow, a surge of power rushed through him so intensely that light literally leaked from his pores. "What the?" Naruto stumbled backward, staring at his glowing hands. The light faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving him dizzy. That wasn't normal chakra. In the distance, he spotted what looked like buildings, or at least structures of some kind. With no better options, he started walking, his feet sinking into the soft sand with each step. The sun didn't move in the sky as he walked, which was the first clue something was seriously wrong. The second clue came when he tried to create shadow clones to scout ahead. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Instead of the familiar poof of smoke and identical copies, the sand around him erupted upward, forming humanoid figures that glowed with inner light. They weren't exact copies of him, their features were indistinct, more like silhouettes filled with golden light. Okay, that's new, Naruto said, examining the strange constructs. They responded to his thoughts just like normal shadow clones, but they felt different, more like extensions of himself than separate entities. One of the light clones pointed toward the horizon. Naruto squinted, making out a dust cloud approaching rapidly. Someone, or something, had spotted him. Get ready, he told the clones, settling into a defensive stance. The light constructs arranged themselves around him, their featureless faces turned toward the oncoming threat. As the dust cloud drew closer, Naruto made out a chariot pulled by what looked like large cats. The driver stood tall and proud, wielding what appeared to be a spear that gleamed in the sunlight. The chariot came to a halt about 20 yards away. The driver, a woman with dark skin and striking features, regarded him with open curiosity. She wore elaborate clothing unlike anything Naruto had seen before, a simple white dress with gold embellishments and an intricate necklace that covered most of her chest. What really caught his attention, though, was her head, or more specifically, the cat-like ears protruding from her dark hair. You are not from these lands, she called out in a language Naruto shouldn't have understood, but somehow did. What manner of spirit are you to command the light itself? Naruto dismissed his light clones with a wave, deciding a show of good faith might be the best approach. I'm Naruto Uzumaki from Konoha. I'm not a spirit, I'm a ninja. And I have no idea where I am or how I got here. The woman's eyes, strikingly gold with vertical pupils like a cat's, widened slightly. She jumped down from her chariot with inhuman grace and approached, her movements fluid and predatory. You speak with a human tongue but glow with divine essence, she said, circling him. And you claim to be from a land I have never heard of. She stopped in front of him, her head tilting to one side. Interesting. Look, lady, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on, Naruto said, turning to keep her in his sights. 1 minute I'm fighting some weird ninja, and the next I'm in this desert with glowing powers I don't understand. To his surprise, the woman laughed, a sound like bells that seemed at odds with her predatory demeanor. You truly don't know, do you? Fascinating. She tapped her spear against the sand, and the large cats pulling her chariot settled down, watching Naruto with the same golden eyes as their mistress. I am Bastet, goddess of protection, cats, and home, she announced, as if that explained everything. And you, Naruto Uzumaki, smell of something ancient. Something that came before even the oldest gods of Kemet. Naruto blinked. Goddess? Kemet? Look, I think there's been some mistake, his protest was cut short as pain lanced through his head. Images flashed behind his eyes, stars being born, darkness giving way to the first rays of light, endless void filled suddenly with the potential for life. He stumbled, clutching his head. Bastet caught him before he fell, her strength belying her slender frame. The memories stir within you, she murmured. Just as the prophecies foretold. What prophecies? Naruto managed, the pain subsiding as quickly as it had come. That is not for me to explain, she said, helping him stand. You must come with me to Heliopolis. Isis will want to see you immediately. Isis? The goddess of magic and wisdom, Bastet explained, leading him to her chariot. If anyone can understand what you are and why you have appeared now, it is her. Naruto hesitated, eyeing the large felines that would apparently be pulling them. They looked like oversized cheetahs with golden armor covering parts of their bodies. Don't worry, Bastet said, noticing his apprehension. My Kasef will not harm you. They serve only me. That's not actually what I was worried about, Naruto muttered, but climbed into the chariot anyway. The alternative was standing in the desert until he baked into a ninja-shaped crisp. Bastet took the reins, giving Naruto an appraising look. You are unlike any human I have encountered in my many centuries. Your spirit burns bright. Thanks. I think. Naruto replied, grabbing the side of the chariot as Bastet snapped the reins and her feline steeds leapt forward with startling speed. As they raced across the desert, Naruto tried to make sense of his situation. Goddesses? Ancient prophecies? Powers beyond his normal abilities? None of it made sense, but then again, his life had never been particularly normal. So, this place, Kemet. What is it? He asked, raising his voice over the wind. It is the Black Land, named for the fertile soil that the great river Nile leaves behind when it floods, Bastet explained. Others call it Egypt. It is the land of gods and pharaohs, the most advanced civilization in the world. And you're really a goddess? Naruto couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. Bastet smirked, revealing slightly pointed canines. Would you like a demonstration? Before Naruto could respond, Bastet's form shimmered and in her place stood a large, majestic cat with the same golden eyes. The cat goddess gave him what could only be described as a smug look before shifting back to her humanoid form, not even breaking stride as she controlled the chariot. Okay, that's pretty convincing, Naruto admitted. But why would a goddess bother with someone like me? Because you shine like the sun itself, Bastet replied simply. And in a land where Ra's light is divine, such power does not go unnoticed. As they crested a dune, the landscape changed dramatically. The barren desert gave way to a strip of lush greenery following the course of a massive river. Beyond the green band, buildings rose, not like the wooden structures of Konoha, but massive stone edifices that seemed to defy gravity. Pyramids dominated the skyline, their tips appearing to touch the very heavens. Welcome to civilization, Naruto Uzumaki, Bastet announced. The eastern bank of the Nile, home to the living. People worked in the fields along the river, dressed in simple white clothing. They stopped to stare as Bastet's chariot raced past, some dropping to their knees in reverence. Naruto noticed that none of them seemed surprised by the sight of a goddess in a cat-drawn chariot, which said a lot about this strange world. They can see you, Naruto observed. The people, I mean. Where I come from, gods don't exactly walk around in public. In Kemet, the gods and humans exist in closer harmony, Bastet explained. We walk among them, guide them, protect them. In return, they worship us and maintain our temples. She glanced at him. Is that not how it works in your Konoha? Naruto thought about the closest things to gods in his world, the tailed beasts, perhaps, or the legendary sage of 6 paths. Not exactly. We have powerful beings, but they don't really interact with regular people much. How sad for them, Bastet said, genuinely seeming to pity his homeland. To be separated from the divine. As they approached the city proper, Naruto's jaw dropped. Buildings of limestone and granite rose on either side of wide avenues. Massive statues of human figures with animal heads, gods, he presumed, lined the roads. People of all sorts filled the streets, merchants selling goods, scribes with papyrus scrolls, soldiers in formation. This is Parare, Bastet informed him. The house of Ra, which Greeks call Heliopolis. The center of sun worship and home to many of the greatest deities. They passed through massive gates guarded by stone sphinxes and entered what appeared to be a vast temple complex. Gardens with exotic plants surrounded buildings decorated with intricate hieroglyphs and colorful painted scenes. Priests in white linen robes with shaved heads stopped their activities to bow as Bastet passed. The chariot finally came to a halt before the largest building yet, a temple with columns so tall Naruto had to crane his neck to see their tops. The structure was painted with vibrant colors and gilded with gold that reflected the sunlight with blinding intensity. The Temple of Adamare, Bastet announced. Where Isis will be waiting for us. As they dismounted from the chariot, Naruto felt a strange sensation, like the building itself was calling to him. His skin began to glow again, light emanating from him in gentle pulses that matched his heartbeat. It recognizes you, Bastet observed, her ears perking up with interest. The sacred stone of the temple resonates with your essence. Why does that keep happening? Naruto asked, trying to control the glow without success. That is what Isis will help determine, Bastet said, leading him toward the temple entrance. But I have my suspicions. As they passed between the massive columns, priests and temple attendants dropped to their knees, pressing their foreheads to the ground, not just for Bastet, Naruto realized, but for him. Their whispers followed him down the corridor. The light returns. The prophecy unfolds. Before before Adam. The interior of the temple was cool despite the desert heat outside. Light filtered through cleverly designed openings in the ceiling, creating patterns on the polished stone floor. The walls were covered in hieroglyphs and paintings depicting gods, pharaohs, and cosmic events that Naruto couldn't begin to understand. Yet somehow, parts of them seemed familiar, especially the scenes showing a primal light spreading across an empty void. They entered a vast chamber dominated by a pool of still water in its center. The ceiling above was painted with stars and cosmic bodies in an accurate map of the night sky. Standing beside the pool was a woman who radiated power in a way even more palpable than Bastet. Unlike the cat goddess's playful demeanor, this woman projected wisdom and authority. She wore a simple white dress with a mantle of colorful feathers draped over her shoulders. On her head sat a throne-shaped headdress, and in her hands she held an ankh, a cross-like symbol with a loop at the top. Isis, Bastet greeted with a respectful incline of her head. I have brought him as the omens directed. The woman, Isis, studied Naruto with eyes that seemed to peer straight into his soul. So I see. And he shines just as the prophecies foretold. She approached Naruto, circling him much as Bastet had done in the desert. Do you know what you are, Naruto Uzumaki? I'm a shinobi from the village hidden in the leaves, Naruto replied, standing his ground despite the goddess's intimidating presence. At least, that's what I was until I got zapped here by some weird jutsu. You are that, yes, Isis acknowledged. But you are also something much, much more. She reached out, not quite touching his chest. Within you burns the essence of the first light, the primordial illumination that existed before before Adam, before any god or creation. Another flash of pain hit Naruto, bringing with it more strange images, his consciousness spreading across infinite darkness, bringing definition to nothingness, the joy of first creation, then a choice, to diminish, to hide, to wait. He gasped as the vision ended, finding himself on his knees with both goddesses watching him intently. The memories are returning, Isis observed. Fascinating. I had not expected such a rapid awakening. I can't be what you're saying, Naruto insisted, pushing himself back to his feet. I'm just Naruto. I've got the nine tails sealed in me, sure, but I'm not some primordial light god. The vessel you inhabit now is indeed human, Isis agreed. But the essence within you, combined with this nine tails you mention, is something older than time itself. The timing cannot be coincidence, Bastet added, her tail swishing behind her anxiously. Not with Apophis stirring in the darkness beyond the duet. Isis shot Bastet a warning look before turning back to Naruto. You must be weary from your journey across realities. Let us provide you with food, drink, and rest. There will be time for explanations. I'm not really tired, Naruto said, though now that she mentioned it, he realized he was starving. But food sounds good. And maybe some actual answers. Isis smiled, the expression warming her regal features. Of course. Follow me. She led them through side chambers until they reached a garden courtyard with a small pool and flowering plants. Servants appeared with trays of food, bread, fruits, roasted meats, and sweet wine. They placed the offerings before Naruto and bowed deeply before retreating. Eat, Isis encouraged, taking a seat across from him on a cushioned bench. The transition between realms takes a toll, even on divine essence. Naruto didn't need to be told twice. He dug into the unfamiliar food with enthusiasm, finding the flavors strange but delicious. Bastet lounged nearby, occasionally reaching to snatch a piece of meat with movements too quick to follow. So, Naruto said between bites, you think I'm some god from before the other gods? Not just any god, Isis corrected. The first light itself. The primal illumination that made all creation possible. She leaned forward. Our oldest texts speak of a time before time, when neither darkness nor light had definition. Then came consciousness, the first light, that defined itself against the void and made existence possible. But what happened to it? Him. Me. Whatever. Naruto asked, trying to wrap his head around the concept. The texts say the first light diminished itself willingly, Isis explained. After enabling the emergence of the first gods, Adam, who rose from the primordial waters, Nun, who was those waters, and others, the light chose to fragment and hide within creation, maintaining the balance from within rather than ruling from without. Naruto frowned, setting down a half-eaten piece of fruit. That doesn't sound like me at all. I've never been big on hiding or working from the shadows. Bastet laughed, the sound echoing through the courtyard. Perhaps that is why you have returned in such a form, a correction of past choices. Or perhaps, Isis suggested more thoughtfully, this human vessel's nature has influenced the awakening essence within. Look, this is all really interesting, Naruto said, but what I really need is to get back home. My friends will be worried, and I was in the middle of an important mission. The gateway that brought you here was not of our making, Isis said. Someone in your world initiated the connection, someone with knowledge of the old ways. Returning you would require understanding exactly how that connection was formed. The guy who did the jutsu mentioned something about a sacrifice and a gateway, Naruto recalled. He seemed surprised when I got pulled through instead of, whatever was supposed to happen. Isis and Bastet exchanged significant looks. What? Naruto demanded. It appears, Isis said carefully, that someone in your world attempted to harness your power, perhaps the power of this Nine Tails you mentioned, to open a gateway between realms. Instead, the ritual recognized the dormant essence of the first light within you and pulled you through completely. Great, Naruto groaned. So I'm stuck here. For now, Isis confirmed. But perhaps this convergence of events serves a greater purpose. The re-emergence of the first light at this particular moment cannot be coincidence. Naruto was about to ask what she meant when a commotion arose from the temple proper. Voices raised in alarm, followed by the sound of running feet. A priest burst into the courtyard, his face pale with fear. My goddesses, he cried, prostrating himself. Forgive the intrusion, but Sobek demands audience. He brings news of disturbances in the Nile and, the priest's words died as he noticed Naruto, his eyes widening at the subtle glow that had returned to Naruto's skin. The light, it's true. Rise, faithful one, Isis commanded. Tell Sobek we will receive him shortly. After the priest hurried away, Naruto turned to the goddesses. Who's Sobek? God of the Nile, crocodiles, and fertility, Bastet explained, her playful demeanor replaced by seriousness. If he comes with warnings about the river, something significant is happening. Naruto, Isis said, fixing him with an intense gaze, whatever you choose to believe about your nature, I must ask that you remain quiet during this audience. Knowledge of your presence here must be controlled carefully. There are those among the pantheon who would see the return of the first light as a threat to the established order. Naruto wanted to argue but recognized the wisdom in her words. He'd been in enough politically complex situations to know when to keep a low profile. Fine, but afterward, I want to know more about how to get home, and what exactly you think is happening with these powers. Isis nodded in agreement just as heavy footsteps approached the courtyard. Bastet moved to stand beside Naruto, placing a hand on his shoulder. Let me disguise your aura, she murmured, passing her hand over him. The glow emanating from his skin dimmed until it was barely perceptible. There. You'll appear as merely an unusual human to most eyes. The newcomer who entered the courtyard was unlike any being Naruto had encountered. He had the body of a muscular human male but the head of a crocodile, complete with scales and razor-sharp teeth. He wore armor of bronze scales and carried a staff topped with a crocodile skull. Isis, Bastet, Sobek greeted, his voice a rumbling growl. The Nile runs red with blood for 12 miles south of Memphis. Fish die by the thousands, and my sacred crocodiles grow restless. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he noticed Naruto. You entertain humans during such times. This one is under my protection, Bastet said smoothly. A visitor from distant lands with unique insights. Sobek snorted but didn't pursue the matter. The priests speak of omens. The stars shifted 3 nights ago in patterns not seen since the war between Ra and Apophis at the dawn of creation. Naruto felt a shiver run down his spine at the mention of Apophis, a name that triggered another flash of memory, darkness coiling around light, trying to consume it, the eternal enemy of creation. And what do the priests of Sobek say about these omens? Isis asked carefully. They are divided, the crocodile god admitted, pacing the courtyard. Some believe Ra's power wanes as he ages, creating imbalance. Others fear Apophis stirs in his prison beyond the Duat. He stopped, turning to face Isis directly. But I know you have consulted the stars yourself, goddess of magic. What do your divinations reveal? Isis's expression remained impassive. The cosmic balance shifts. Great power awakens. Beyond this, the future remains clouded. Sobek's scaled brow furrowed. You withhold something, Isis. I share what certainties I have, she replied coolly. Would you have me speak of possibilities and plunge the pantheon into panic? The crocodile god studied her for a long moment before turning his attention to Naruto. And what is your interest in this, human? You wear strange garments and carry yourself like a warrior. Naruto met the god's gaze steadily. I'm just trying to find my way home. Humph. Sobek turned back to Isis. Set calls for a gathering of the major deities at Abu Gharaf in 3 days' time. He believes these disturbances require a unified response. Set. Bastet's tail bristled. Since when does the Lord of Chaos concern himself with maintaining order? Since the river that sustains all life in Kemet runs with blood, Sobek retorted. Even Set understands that some forces threaten all gods equally. We will attend, Isis assured him. Thank you for bringing this news, mighty Sobek. The crocodile god gave a stiff nod before departing, his scaled tail dragging across the stone floor behind him. When they were alone again, Naruto exhaled deeply. So that's a god, huh? Gotta say, the crocodile head is a bit much. Despite the tense situation, Bastet chuckled. Not all of us choose to appear so, dramatically. Sobek simply embraces his domain's most fearsome aspect. The blood in the Nile is troubling, Isis said, her focus already elsewhere. It aligns with the ancient prophecies that speak of the serpent's return. The serpent? Naruto asked. You mean Apophis, right? The one Sobek mentioned? Yes. Isis's expression darkened. Apophis is the embodiment of chaos and destruction, the void that existed before creation and seeks to return all to nothingness. Ra battles him each night as the sun travels through the underworld. But recently, Bastet added, the battle has grown more difficult. Ra is not as strong as he once was, having ruled for countless millennia. And you think my appearance has something to do with all this? Naruto asked, the pieces starting to come together. The first light was the only force Apophis truly feared, Isis confirmed. Before Ra, before the ordered pantheon, it was the light that first defined the void and gave chaos its boundaries. Naruto stood up, pacing the courtyard as he processed this information. So you're saying some cosmic snake monster is breaking free, your sun god is getting old and weak, and I'm supposedly the original light that can stop this chaos thing? That is the essence of it, yes, Isis said with remarkable calm. Great. Naruto ran a hand through his spiky blonde hair. And here I thought dealing with Akatsuki was complicated. A moment of silence fell before Bastet spoke. You mentioned this 9 tails sealed within you. What manner of being is it? The nine-tailed fox is a chakra beast, we call them bijou, Naruto explained. There are 9 of them, and they're basically massive concentrations of chakra with consciousness. The 9 tails was sealed inside me when I was a baby. A being of pure energy contained within a human vessel, Isis mused. Perhaps this is why the essence of the first light found resonance with you. Your body was already accustomed to housing a power beyond human capacity. As if responding to their discussion, Naruto felt a familiar stirring within, the Nine Tails consciousness, which had been strangely quiet since his arrival in this world. I think Kurama's waking up, he said. Kurama? Bastet tilted her head. The Nine Tails. That's his name. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing inward toward the mental space he shared with the fox. Hey, Kurama. You there? The familiar massive form of the Nine Tails materialized in his mindscape, but something was different. The fox's chakra seemed to be mingling with another energy, the golden light that had been emanating from Naruto's body. Naruto, Kurama growled, his voice resonating strangely. What have you gotten us into this time? I'm trying to figure that out myself, Naruto admitted. We're in some place called Kemet, or Egypt, with actual gods walking around. And apparently, I might be the reincarnation of some primordial light deity. The fox's eyes narrowed. I feel something, ancient. Older than the Sage of Six Paths, older than the Ten Tails itself. It's merging with my chakra, enhancing it beyond anything I've experienced. Is it dangerous? Naruto asked, concerned. Not to us, Kurama replied thoughtfully. It feels familiar somehow. Like returning to an origin point I never knew existed. Before Naruto could respond, he was pulled back to the external world by Bastet shaking his shoulder. Naruto. Your eyes changed color, she said, studying him closely. They glowed golden, like the sun itself. Sorry, he blinked, readjusting to his surroundings. I was talking to Kurama, the Nine Tails. He says he can feel this light energy mixing with his chakra. Says it feels familiar somehow. Fascinating, Isis murmured. The essence recognizes a kindred spirit in your fox companion. This may accelerate the awakening process. Look, Naruto said firmly, I still don't know if I believe all this first light business, but if there's really some threat to this world, I'll help however I can. That's what I do. But I also need to find a way home eventually. Isis nodded. Fair enough. For now, we should prepare you for the gathering at Abu Garaf. If Set is calling the gods together, your presence will not remain secret for long. Why not just tell everyone who he is? Bastet asked, her tail swishing thoughtfully. The return of the first light would rally many to our cause. And turn many others against us, Isis countered. Some would see it as a threat to the established order, others as an opportunity to seize power in the chaos of transition. No, better to introduce Naruto gradually, as his powers manifest more fully. So what's the plan? Naruto asked. Tonight, you rest, Isis decided. Tomorrow, we begin testing the extent of your abilities, both those from your world and those awakening with the first light's essence. And we prepare for the gathering of gods, where the true political landscape will reveal itself. As if on cue, servants appeared to show Naruto to chambers prepared for him within the temple complex. The room was spacious and cool, with a bed covered in fine linens and a balcony overlooking the city. As night fell, Naruto stood on that balcony watching the unfamiliar stars, wondering what his friends were doing and if they were searching for him. I'll find a way back, he promised the night sky. But first, I guess I've got a job to do here. He raised his hand, focusing on the feeling he'd experienced in the desert. Light bloomed from his palm, not chakra but something purer, more fundamental. It shaped itself into a small sun that hovered above his hand, casting warm golden light across the balcony. Ha, he muttered. That's definitely new. From the shadows of his room, unseen, Bastet watched with gleaming eyes. She slipped away silently, a smile playing on her lips. The first light was awakening indeed, and faster than even Isis had predicted. The next morning began before dawn, with Bastet pouncing on the foot of Naruto's bed, startling him awake. "Rise, Light-bringer," she called cheerfully. "Much to do before the sun crosses the sky." Naruto groaned, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. "Do gods not believe in sleeping in? Time is a luxury we cannot afford," she replied, tossing him a bundle of clothing. "Put these on. Egyptian garments will help you blend in better than your strange orange attire." The clothes consisted of a simple white kilt that ended just above the knee, a broad collar of beaded work that covered his shoulders and upper chest, and leather sandals. Naruto changed quickly, finding the lightweight garments surprisingly comfortable in the warm climate. "Not bad," he admitted, examining himself in a polished metal mirror. "But I'm keeping my headband." He tied the Konoha symbol firmly in place. "As you wish," Bastet conceded. "Now come, Isis awaits us in the temple's inner sanctum." They traversed corridors already busy with priests performing morning rituals. Many stopped to bow as Bastet passed, and more than a few cast curious glances at Naruto. Word of a strange visitor with unusual powers had clearly spread through the temple complex. The inner sanctum proved to be a vast chamber with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. At its center stood a massive stone altar carved with hieroglyphs that seemed to shift and change when Naruto tried to focus on them. Behind the altar, a colossal statue of a seated figure with a falcon's head wore a sun disk upon its crown. "Are," Bastet explained, noticing Naruto's gaze. "Though this particular aspect is Are Horikti, Are who is Horus of the two horizons." "You guys really like having multiple names and forms, huh?" Naruto observed. "Divinity is complex," Isis said, emerging from behind a column. Today she wore a headdress shaped like a throne, and her eyes were lined with kohl that emphasized their piercing quality. "Gods embody concepts, not merely personalities. Our aspects shift as our domains interact." She approached the altar, gesturing for Naruto to join her. "Today we will explore the limits of your current abilities and begin awakening those that lie dormant." "I'm ready," Naruto said, rolling his shoulders. "What's first? Target practice? Sparring?" Isis's lips quirked in what might have been amusement. "First, meditation." Naruto's enthusiasm deflated visibly. "Seriously? Meditation? The power of the first light is consciousness itself," Isis explained patiently. "Before you can wield it effectively, you must understand its nature." With a sigh, Naruto sat cross-legged on the stone floor as directed. Isis and Bastet positioned themselves across from him, creating a triangle formation. "Close your eyes," Isis instructed. "Focus on your breathing first, then on the energy within you. You mentioned chakra, how does it feel compared to this new power?" Naruto complied, turning his awareness inward. "Chakra feels, like a current, a flow I can direct. It has substance, almost weight. This light energy feels different, like it doesn't flow so much as, expand. Like it's not moving through me but radiating from somewhere deeper." "Good," Isis encouraged. "Now reach for that source. Don't try to control it yet, simply observe it." Naruto reached inward, past the familiar realm of chakra, past even the chamber where Kurama resided. There, at a level he'd never accessed before, he found it, a core of pure, brilliant light. The moment his consciousness touched it, visions flooded his mind, emptiness. Not darkness, for darkness requires light to define it. Simply, nothing. Then, awareness. The first thought in a void of thoughtlessness. "I am." With that declaration, light bloomed, not illuminating the void, but defining it. Where light ended, darkness began. Where both existed, creation became possible. Naruto gasped, his eyes flying open. Golden light poured from them, and his entire body glowed so brightly that both goddesses had to shield their eyes. "Naruto," Isis called firmly. "Control it. Remember who you are in this form. The command anchored him, pulling him back from the cosmic memory. The light dimmed, though it continued to shimmer beneath his skin like sunlight through water. That was. Naruto struggled to find words. I remember, creating. Or defining. It doesn't make sense in human terms. The first act of creation, Isis confirmed. The moment when existence itself became possible through the simple declaration of self-awareness. But I'm not, I can't be, Naruto stammered. The essence that performed that act lives within you now, Bastet said, her usual playfulness subdued by awe. Whether you are its reincarnation or merely its vessel doesn't change that reality. Naruto took a deep breath, centering himself. Okay. So I've got the cosmic night light inside me. How does that help us with the current problem? What can I actually do with it? That, Isis said with a satisfied nod, is what we shall discover next. What followed was a series of tests that pushed Naruto's understanding of his abilities to their limits. They moved to a secluded courtyard where high walls would prevent casual observation. First, Isis had him attempt to channel the light energy as he would chakra. Naruto created a Rasengan, but instead of the usual blue spiraling sphere, a miniature sun formed in his palm, radiating heat and light so intense that it melted the stone target 50 feet away. Whoa! Naruto dispersed the technique immediately. That's way stronger than usual. The first light is the fundamental energy of creation, Isis explained. Your chakra techniques provide structure, but the power behind them has changed. Next, they tested his ability to create clones. The light constructs from the desert appeared again, but this time Naruto could control their appearance better, making them resemble his normal shadow clones. They're different from regular clones, he explained as the light constructs sparred with each other. They feel more like extensions of myself than copies. And they don't disappear from a single hit, they just reform unless I dismiss them. Because they are made of light itself, Bastet observed, playfully swatting at one clone who dodged with inhuman speed. More fundamental than physical matter. As the day progressed, Naruto discovered he could fly, or at least levitate, by manipulating the light energy around him create solid constructs of light that could take almost any form see vast distances by extending his awareness through light move at incredible speeds by converting his physical form partially into light heal wounds, demonstrated when Bastet deliberately scratched him during a sparring match. But perhaps most unsettling was the knowledge that seemed to pour into his mind. Unbidden, understanding of cosmic forces, the structure of reality, the nature of gods and humans alike. It's like I suddenly know things I never studied, he explained as they rested between exercises. Like how the stars move, or how life force flows through all living things. Is that normal? The first light witnessed the birth of all knowledge, Isis said. As you access more of its essence, that knowledge returns. By late afternoon, Naruto was mentally exhausted despite his seemingly limitless physical energy. They retreated to the garden courtyard where they had dined the previous day, and servants brought refreshments. You've made remarkable progress, Isis said as Naruto gulped down water. The essence awakens within you far faster than I anticipated. Is that good or bad? Naruto asked, wiping his mouth. Both, Isis admitted. It gives us a better chance against whatever threats are emerging, but it also means you will be harder to disguise at the gathering. Speaking of which, Bastet interjected, stretching languidly on a bench, we should discuss the politics you'll face at Abu Gharaf. The Egyptian pantheon is far from unified these days. What's the breakdown? Naruto asked, falling easily into strategic thinking after years of ninja missions. Ra remains the nominal head of the pantheon, Isis explained, but his power wanes as he ages. His closest allies include Thoth, god of wisdom, Sekhmet, goddess of war, and his children, who support his continued rule. Set leads the faction that believes change is needed, Bastet continued. Though he is god of chaos, storms, and the desert, he is not evil, merely destructive in the way that allows for renewal. His supporters include Sobek, whom you met, Neith, goddess of hunting and warfare, and various minor deities. And where do you two stand? Naruto asked shrewdly. Isis smiled approvingly at the question. I maintain independence, as magic and wisdom must serve all gods equally. Though I was Ra's ally in ancient times, I now serve the balance itself. And I go where I please, Bastet added with a wink. Cats cannot be categorized so easily. Though I prefer Ra's order to Set's chaos, I recognize that both are necessary. So at this gathering, Naruto summarized, we've got the old guard, the reformers, and the independents. Classic political setup. What about this Apophis threat? Where does that fit in? That is the true concern, Isis said gravely. If Apophis is indeed breaking free of his cosmic prison, the Pantheon's internal politics become irrelevant. Yet many gods are too focused on their own interests to see the greater threat. Which is why your appearance may shift the balance, Bastet added. The first light preceded all gods, even Ra and Apophis. Your voice would carry weight, if you choose to use it. Naruto considered this. And if I just want to find a way home? The two goals may be connected, Isis suggested. The ritual that brought you here tapped into ancient forces. Understanding those forces, perhaps with the help of Thoth or myself, could open a path back to your world. But that research will take time. Time we may not have if Apophis is rising, Bastet pointed out. Naruto nodded slowly. All right then. We attend this gathering, I keep a low profile but help if needed, and meanwhile we work on finding me a way home. Sound like a plan? Both goddesses nodded in agreement. There is one more thing you should know, Isis said after a moment's hesitation. The prophecies that speak of the first light's return, they are not universally seen as positive omens. What do you mean? Naruto asked, suddenly alert. Some texts suggest that the light's return heralds the end of the current age, a reset of creation itself, she explained carefully. There are those who would interpret your presence as a threat to existence as we know it. Great, Naruto muttered. So I might have people trying to kill me just for existing. Nothing new there. We will protect you, Bastet said firmly, surprising Naruto with her intensity. Until you can protect yourself with your full power. I appreciate that, Naruto said, genuinely touched. But I'm pretty good at handling people who want me dead. Had lots of practice. Before the conversation could continue, a rumbling shook the temple, causing dust to drift down from the ceiling. The vibrations grew stronger, and shouts of alarm rose from outside. What's happening? Naruto jumped to his feet. Something approaches, Isis said, her expression darkening. Something that should not be in this realm. They rushed to the temple entrance, emerging onto the broad avenue that led to the main gates of the complex. In the distance, over the city, the sky had darkened unnaturally. Clouds swirled in impossible patterns, and lightning of unusual colors, purple, green, black, forked through the air. Those aren't natural storms, Bastet hissed, her hair standing on end. No, Isis agreed grimly. Those are manifestations of chaos magic. The temple guards and priests ran about in panic, some dropping to their knees in prayer, others fleeing entirely. Beyond the temple walls, the sounds of screaming citizens carried on the wind. We need to evacuate the city, Naruto said, automatically shifting into crisis management mode. Get people to safety, then deal with whatever's causing this. Agreed, Isis said. Bastet, gather the temple guards and organize an evacuation toward the eastern desert. The chaos seems concentrated over the western districts. And us? Naruto asked. Isis's eyes glinted with determination. We go to the source. They set off toward the disturbance, Isis gliding just above the ground while Naruto kept pace with chakra-enhanced speed. As they moved deeper into the city, the devastation became apparent. Buildings lay cracked or collapsed entirely. People ran in terror, many injured and covered in dust. Naruto created dozens of light clones without breaking stride. Help the injured. Guide people toward the eastern gates, he commanded, and the clones dispersed to assist. At the city center, they found the source of the chaos. A massive vortex had opened in the sky, swirling with darkness that seemed to devour light. From this portal, creatures were emerging, serpentine forms with multiple heads, bodies that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly, things that hurt the eyes and mind to behold. Chaos spawn, Isis identified them, raising her hands as golden symbols of protection appeared around her. Fragments of Apophis's essence sent to sow destruction. Can they be killed? Naruto asked, already forming another light Rasengan in his palm. Not killed, but banished back to the void, Isis corrected. Light and order are anathema to them. Light, huh? Naruto grinned. I can work with that. He charged forward, his body glowing with golden energy. The nearest chaos spawn, a writhing mass of serpents fused into one undulating body, sensed his approach and reared back, hissing with multiple mouths. Naruto slammed the light Rasengan into its center mass. The creature shrieked as light tore through its form, ripping it apart into particles that dissipated like smoke. One down, Naruto called back to Isis, who was weaving complex spells that created barriers of golden light around clusters of civilians. More chaos spawn noticed Naruto and converged on him, perhaps sensing the threat he represented. He created more light clones, each wielding spheres of concentrated light energy. They fought back to back, driving the creatures away from the civilians Isis was protecting. As Naruto battled, he felt something stirring deep within, the cosmic awareness he had touched during meditation. It whispered of patterns, of weakness, of the fundamental nature of these chaos entities. Following instinct, he altered his approach, no longer just forcing light against darkness but weaving it in specific configurations. Their extensions, he realized aloud. Connected to something beyond the portal. Isis, now floating above the battle, called down to him, yes. They are tethered to Apophis himself. If you can sever those connections. Naruto didn't need further explanation. He could see the invisible threads now, cords of anti-light that connected each spawn to the portal. He formed a new technique, instinctively molding the light energy into a blade that extended from his hand like a sword. Let's cut you loose, he muttered, charging toward the largest concentration of spawn. The light blade sliced through the chaos entities, but more importantly, it severed their connections to the portal. The creatures wailed as they lost cohesion, dissolving into nothingness. For nearly an hour, Naruto and Isis fought back the invasion, protecting civilians and pushing the chaos spawn back toward the portal. Occasionally, Naruto caught glimpses of other divine figures joining the battle elsewhere in the city, a woman with a lioness's head breathing fire, a man with the head of an ibis casting spells similar to Isis's, a dark figure wielding a staff that commanded sandstorms against the spawn. Finally, as suddenly as it had appeared, the portal began to contract. The remaining chaos spawn retreated through it, as if called back by some unseen master. The unnatural storm dissipated, leaving the afternoon sun shining incongruously over the damaged city. Naruto stood amidst the rubble, his body still glowing faintly, surrounded by his light clones who had protected countless civilians during the attack. Citizens emerged from hiding places, staring at him with expressions ranging from fear to awe. Lightbringer, someone whispered, and the name was taken up by others. The light returns. Isis descended to stand beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. So much for keeping a low profile, she murmured, though she didn't sound entirely displeased. Sorry, Naruto said, dismissing his clones with a thought. I couldn't just stand by. Nor should you have, a new voice said. They turned to see the ibis-headed god approaching, leaning on a staff inscribed with hieroglyphs. Despite his bird-like features, his eyes held ancient wisdom and keen intelligence. Thoth, Isis greeted with a respectful nod. Your assistance was most welcome. As was yours, Thoth replied, his eyes fixed on Naruto. And that of your interesting companion. His head tilted to one side, bird-like. So the rumors are true. The first light walks among us again. Before Naruto could respond, another figure joined them, the lioness-headed goddess he had glimpsed during the battle. Her eyes were fierce, and heat seemed to radiate from her body. "Sekhmet," Isis acknowledged. "You fought well today." As did this one, Sekhmet growled, examining Naruto with predatory interest. "I saw him banish dozens of chaos spawns single-handedly. No ordinary human possesses such power." "Perhaps explanations should wait," Thoth suggested, gesturing to the gathered crowd. "This is hardly the place for a divine conclave." "Agreed," Isis said. "Let us return to the temple and assess the damage to the city." As they turned to leave, a dark chuckle stopped them. The fourth divine figure Naruto had noticed, the one commanding sandstorms, stepped from the shadows. He had the head of an unknown animal with a long, curved snout and tall, rectangular ears. His eyes glowed red, and he carried a staff topped with what looked like a stylized animal head. "How convenient," he said, his voice surprisingly melodious for such a fearsome appearance. "The first light returns just as chaos breaches the mortal realm. One might almost suspect arrangement." "Set," Isis's voice cooled noticeably. "Your insinuations are unwelcome and unfounded." "Are they?" Set circled Naruto, studying him from all angles. "The ancient texts speak of the light's return heralding the end of an age. Perhaps this one seeks to hasten that end by allowing Apophis a foothold." Naruto met the god's red gaze unflinchingly. "I just got here yesterday. If you think I arranged all this, you're giving me way too much credit." Set's eyes narrowed, but then he laughed, a sound like dry desert winds. "It speaks with a human tongue. How charming." He turned to Isis. "I expect you to bring your pet to Abu Gharaf as planned. Ra will want to see this curiosity for himself." With that, he dissolved into swirling sand that blew away on the breeze. "Well," Thoth observed dryly, "that complicates matters." "He always does," Sekhmet growled. "But he's right about one thing, Ra must meet this one." She nodded to Naruto before bounding away with inhuman speed, heading toward the damaged sections of the city. Left with just Isis and Thoth, Naruto exhaled heavily. "I'm guessing the subtle approach is off the table now." "Entirely," Thoth agreed, amusement in his voice. "You've made quite the entrance, First Light." "It's Naruto," he corrected firmly. "Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha. Whatever I might have been before, that's who I am now." Thoth studied him with new interest. "Fascinating. The light retains its human identity despite awakening. This is unprecedented." "We should return to the temple," Isis interjected. "Bastet will be worried, and there is much to discuss before Abu Gharaf." As they made their way back, citizens bowed or prostrated themselves as Naruto passed. Some reached out to touch him, only to pull back in awe when they felt the warmth emanating from his skin. Children pointed and whispered, "The light bringer. He saved us from the dark things." Naruto found the attention uncomfortable but familiar, not unlike the transition he'd experienced in Konoha from being despised as the Nine-Tails container to being celebrated as a hero after defeating pain. Back at the temple, they found Bastet waiting anxiously. She pounced on Naruto the moment he entered, checking him for injuries with genuine concern. "You reckless, brilliant human," she scolded, though her eyes shone with approval. "Taking on chaos spawn directly. The entire city is buzzing with tales of the golden warrior who cut down the darkness." "So I've heard," Naruto said, gently disentangling himself from her inspection. "So much for keeping a low profile until the gathering. It changes our approach, but not necessarily for the worse," Thoth observed, settling onto a bench. "Now you enter Abu Gharaf not as an unknown quantity but as a demonstrated ally against chaos. It strengthens your position considerably." "And Set's insinuations?" Isis asked. "Predictable," Thoth waved a hand dismissively. "Set sees conspiracies everywhere. Few will give his accusations much weight, especially after today's display. What exactly were those things? Naruto asked, accepting a cup of water from a servant. And why attack now? Chaos spawn are fragments of Apophis's essence, Thoth explained. They cannot manifest in the ordered world without significant disruption to the cosmic balance. The fact that they appeared at all confirms our worst fears. Apophis grows stronger, and the barriers between realms weaken. But why here? Why Prare specifically? Bastet pressed. Thoth and Isis exchanged glances before Isis spoke. Perhaps they sensed the awakening of the first light. Apophis always feared its power above all others. So this is my fault? Naruto asked, dismayed. No, Isis said firmly. If Apophis can already breach the mortal realm, the deterioration began long before your arrival. Your presence may have determined their target, but the attack itself was inevitable. What matters now, Thoth said, is how we proceed. Abu Garaf takes on new significance. It is no longer merely a gathering to discuss omens but a war council against a confirmed threat. And what role do you expect me to play in all this? Naruto asked directly. That, Thoth replied with surprising gentleness, is entirely up to you, young Lightbringer. You may simply be Naruto Uzumaki, the displaced ninja seeking a way home. Or you may embrace the legacy awakening within you and help us face a threat to all creation. The choice is yours. Some choice, Naruto muttered. It is always a choice, Isis countered. Even the first light chose its path at the dawn of creation. That is the true power that Apophis lacks, the power to choose creation over destruction, order over chaos, light over darkness. Naruto fell silent, contemplating her words. Inside his mindscape, he felt Kurama stirring again. You know what I'd choose, the Nine Tails rumbled. I wasn't created just to watch worlds fall. A smile tugged at Naruto's lips. No, we weren't. Looking up at the divine beings watching him, Naruto made his decision. I'll help however I can. That's my ninja way. But I'm still Naruto Uzumaki, not just some cosmic light bulb. We clear on that? Bastet laughed delightedly. Crystal clear, light bulb. Then we prepare for Abu Garaf, Isis concluded. And for whatever comes after. As night fell over the damaged but enduring city of Prare, rumors spread of the golden warrior who had faced the darkness. Of light given form. Of an ancient power returned when needed most. The first light had awakened, and the cosmic balance would never be the same. Chapter 2, Divinity's Edge. The sun hadn't even peeked over the horizon when Naruto found himself standing in the middle of the Nile, water swirling around his calves as Bastet lounged on the riverbank watching him with amused golden eyes. Focus, she called, stretching lazily. The light doesn't just come from within you, it's everywhere, in everything. Feel it in the water, in the air, even in the darkness before dawn. Easy for you to say, Naruto grumbled, closing his eyes again. You've had centuries to practice this god stuff. 3 days had passed since the Chaos Spawn attack on Prare. 3 days of intense training, political maneuvering, and increasingly strange dreams that left Naruto waking up with fragments of cosmic memories floating through his mind. Tomorrow they would travel to Abu Garaf for the gathering of gods. According to Isis, he needed to master at least basic control of his awakening abilities before then, which explained why he was standing in a river before sunrise trying to do something that made even the most complicated jutsu look simple in comparison. Stop thinking like a ninja, Bastet advised, reading his frustration. Chakra is something you direct, you push. Light simply is. Don't force it, become it. Naruto took a deep breath, letting go of his usual approach to energy manipulation. Instead of grabbing and shaping power, he allowed himself to resonate with it. The change was immediate and startling. Light bloomed around him, not just from his body but from the water itself, spreading outward in concentric circles that illuminated the river for hundreds of yards in every direction. Whoa, he breathed, opening his eyes to see the water glowing beneath him. Better. Bastet clapped her hands. Now shape it, but gently. Like coaxing a cat to come to you rather than grabbing it. The light responded to his subtle guidance, condensing into patterns across the water's surface, spirals and whirls that mimicked the flow of the river itself. Naruto found he could feel every eddy and current through the light, sensing the fish swimming below and even the composition of the riverbed. "This is incredible," he said, moving his hands experimentally and watching the light respond. "It's like I can feel everything the light touches." "That's because you can," Bastet said, stepping onto the water's surface with feline grace. Unlike Naruto, she didn't use chakra to walk on water, she simply chose not to sink, and reality complied. "Light touches everything, sees everything. It was your first gift to creation." "My gift, or the first lights?" Naruto asked, the distinction still important to him. Bastet shrugged, circling him. "Does it matter? The essence is within you now, changing you, even as you change it with your human heart and will." Before Naruto could respond, a tremor ran through the light patterns on the water. Something was approaching, something that didn't belong. "Down," he shouted, tackling Bastet just as a black projectile shot through the space where she'd been standing. It hit the water with a hiss of steam and vanished. Naruto rolled to his feet, instantly alert. "What was that?" "Chaos shard," Bastet growled, her playful demeanor replaced by deadly focus. Her nails extended into claws, and her eyes glowed brighter in the pre-dawn darkness. "We're being hunted." More black projectiles launched from the shore, moving too fast for normal eyes to track. But Naruto wasn't seeing with just his eyes anymore. The light he'd spread through the area became his expanded awareness, and he could perceive the attack from multiple angles simultaneously. "I count 6 attackers," he said, moving in perfect sync with Bastet as they dodged and weaved. "Humanoid, but wrong somehow. Like they're wearing bodies that don't fit." "Possessed," Bastet confirmed. "Humans corrupted by chaos fragments. We need to free them without killing them." "On it." Naruto created a dozen light clones that shot toward the shore. Unlike his old shadow clones, these moved with liquid grace, more light than substance until the moment they needed to be solid. The possessed humans emerged from hiding, ordinary Egyptian citizens whose eyes now glowed with sickly purple light. They moved with jerky, unnatural motions, like puppets with tangled strings. "The light must die," they chanted in unison, their voices layered with inhuman undertones. "Before the awakening. Before the end." "Okay, that's creepy," Naruto muttered, reaching shore as his clones engaged the possessed humans. He could see the chaos energy now, writhing, serpentine forms attached to the human spines, controlling them like parasites. The challenge would be removing the parasites without harming the hosts. "Bastet. Can you hold them still?" he called, formulating a plan. Briefly, she responded, producing a sistrum, a ritual rattle, from seemingly nowhere. She shook it in a complex pattern, and the sound it made resonated oddly in the air. The possessed humans froze, caught in the divine harmonics. "Now, Naruto." Moving faster than human eyes could follow, Naruto touched each possessed person, fingers glowing with golden light. Instead of attacking the chaos parasites directly, he strengthened the human's own inner light, the spark of life and consciousness that existed in all living things. One by one, the humans convulsed as their reinforced spirits rejected the parasitic control. The chaos fragments detached, writhing in the air for moments before Naruto's light clones captured and contained them in spheres of pure light. The freed humans collapsed, unconscious but alive. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 2 minutes. "Nice technique," Bastet approved, examining the contained chaos fragments with professional interest. "Not destroying but strengthening. Very light-like. Will they be okay?" Naruto asked, checking the pulse of an elderly man who'd been among the possessed. "They'll recover, though they may not remember what happened," Bastet assured him. "But this is troubling. Possession requires direct exposure to chaos energy. Either these people were at the attack 3 days ago. Or Apophis has more agents in the city, Naruto finished grimly. We should get these folks to the temple healers and tell Isis what happened. Bastet nodded, then grinned suddenly. Want to see a neat trick first? Without waiting for an answer, she shifted form, growing larger until a massive lioness stood before Naruto, golden-furred and powerful enough to make even Kurama seem impressed. Hop on, she growled, her voice deeper but still recognizable. We'll get there faster. Naruto laughed despite the situation. Now that's a cool jutsu. He quickly created more light clones to carefully carry the unconscious victims, then jumped onto Bastet's back. They raced through the awakening city, turning heads and causing quite a commotion. By the time they reached the temple of Ra, priests were already rushing out to meet them, alerted by the spectacle of a giant lioness carrying a glowing man and trailed by light beings bearing unconscious humans. Just another normal day in Egypt, Naruto quipped as they skidded to a stop in the temple courtyard. Isis emerged from the temple, looking unsurprised. I see morning training took an unexpected turn. We were ambushed, Bastet explained, shifting back to her humanoid form. Chaos-possessed humans. They specifically targeted Naruto. Isis's expression darkened. Bring the victims to the healing chambers. I'll examine them myself. As the light clones carried them away, she turned to Naruto. You're unhurt. Takes more than some chaos puppets to damage me, he assured her, though he appreciated the concern. But they said something weird, about stopping me, before the awakening, before the end. Any idea what that means? Unfortunately, yes, Isis sighed. Let us speak inside, away from eager ears. They followed her to a private chamber deep within the temple, a room whose walls were inscribed with hieroglyphs and symbols that seemed to move when Naruto didn't look directly at them. The air hummed with protective energies. I've been translating the oldest prophecies regarding the first light, Isis explained, gesturing to papyrus scrolls spread across a stone table. Most speak of your return as a positive event, renewal, rebirth, the healing of cosmic wounds. But some don't, Naruto guessed, noting her careful phrasing. Some suggest that the light's return marks the end of the current cycle of creation, she confirmed. A reset, if you will. In these texts, the first light absorbs all that is back into itself, ending the separation of energies that allows our reality to exist. Whoa, wait, Naruto held up his hands. You're saying these prophecies think I'm going to, what, eat the universe? Despite the seriousness, Bastet snickered. When you put it that way. Not you, precisely, Isis clarified. The first light's essence, fully awakened and untempered by individual consciousness. These pessimistic interpretations suggest that the light eventually reaches a point where the experiment of separate existence is deemed a failure, and everything is reabsorbed to start anew. That's insane, Naruto protested. I would never do that. And if this first light inside me would, then I'll make sure it doesn't fully awaken. That may not be possible, Isis said gently. The awakening has already begun. Each time you access those powers, more of the ancient consciousness integrates with your own. Then I'll keep control, Naruto insisted. I've been sharing headspace with Kurama for years. I know a thing or two about maintaining my identity with another consciousness inside me. Kurama, who had been quietly observing, chose this moment to communicate directly. It's not quite the same, Kit. I'm a separate entity. This light thing, it feels like it was you all along, just forgotten. Naruto frowned, not liking the implications. Before he could respond, Thoth entered the chamber, carrying more scrolls. I've confirmed your translations, Isis, the ibis-headed god announced before noticing Naruto's troubled expression. Ah. I see you've shared the less optimistic prophecies. We were attacked this morning, Bastet informed him. Chaos-possessed humans targeting Naruto specifically. They mentioned stopping him before the awakening and the end. Thoth nodded thoughtfully. Apophis would naturally favor the catastrophic interpretation of your return. If he can eliminate you before your powers fully manifest, he removes his greatest obstacle. And if these doom prophecies are right, he saves reality in the process, Naruto pointed out. A convenient alignment of interests, Thoth acknowledged. But prophecies are rarely so straightforward. They speak in metaphors and possibilities, not certainties. The fundamental question, Isis added, is one of agency. Does the first light act with consciousness and choice, or is it merely a cosmic force following predetermined patterns? In other words, Bastet translated for Naruto, will you still be you when the awakening completes, or will you become something else entirely? Naruto paced the chamber, processing everything. I don't feel like I'm losing myself. The memories, the powers, they're adding to who I am, not replacing me. That's encouraging, Thoth said. Perhaps the human vessel, your human life and experiences, provides something the primordial essence lacked before: perspective, growth, attachment. A heart, Bastet suggested simply. Speaking of perspective, Isis changed the subject. We should continue your preparation for Abu Garaf. The political landscape has grown even more complex since the attack on Parare. Naruto welcomed the shift to more practical matters. What am I walking into tomorrow? Thoth conjured an image in the air, a three-dimensional map of a massive temple complex built into a cliffside. Abu Garaf is neutral ground, sacred to all Egyptian deities. The main gathering will take place in the Hall of Two Truths, where souls are traditionally judged. Symbolic, Isis noted. Set is cleverly positioning this as a judgment on Ra's stewardship. Who exactly will be there? Naruto asked. The major gods, certainly, Bastet counted on her fingers. Ra, Set, Osiris, Horus, Hathor, Sekhmet, Nephthys, Anubis, Sobek, Neith, Thoth, Isis, and myself. Plus dozens of minor deities and court attendants. And they'll all be, judging me. Naruto tried to keep the apprehension from his voice. More likely using you as a fulcrum for their own political leverage, Thoth corrected. Your emergence shifts the balance of power. Each faction will try to claim you as their ally or denounce you as their enemy. Great, Naruto muttered. Divine politics. Just what I needed. You handled human politics in your world, did you not? Isis asked. Naruto thought about the Kage summit, the alliance negotiations during the war, and his work with the other villages since. Yeah, I guess I did. Still doesn't mean I like it. You needn't play their games, Bastet assured him. In fact, I rather hope you don't. It would be refreshing to see the pantheon knocked off balance by someone who refuses to scheme. Naruto grinned at her. Now that sounds more my style. The rest of the day passed in intensive preparation. Thoth provided historical context for the tensions within the pantheon, explaining the ancient rivalries and alliances that would influence the gathering. Isis focused on protocol and etiquette, teaching Naruto the proper forms of address and behavior expected when meeting various deities. Ra should be addressed as Divine Light of Heaven on first greeting, she instructed. After that, Great One is sufficient. Can't I just call him Ra? Naruto asked, struggling to memorize the complex forms. Only if you wish to be immediately identified as either hopelessly ignorant or deliberately provocative, Isis replied dryly. I vote for the second, Bastet called from where she was sprawled across a couch, pretending not to listen. By late afternoon, Naruto's head was swimming with information. When Isis finally called a halt to the lessons, he gratefully escaped to the temple gardens for some fresh air. He found a quiet spot beneath a sycamore tree and sat cross-legged, trying to process everything. The weight of the situation was finally hitting him: cosmic forces, ancient prophecies, gods and chaos monsters. And somewhere in the middle of it all was Naruto Uzumaki, who just wanted to find a way home to his friends. Penny for your thoughts, a feminine voice interrupted his brooding. Naruto looked up to see Bastet approaching, carrying 2 cups of wine. Gone was her usual playful demeanor, replaced by something more contemplative. Pretty sure my thoughts aren't worth that much right now, he joked, accepting the cup she offered. Just trying to make sense of all this. Bastet settled beside him, close enough that he could feel the unnatural heat radiating from her divine form. It's a lot to absorb, even for a god. And you've had what, 4 days? Something like that. Naruto sipped the wine, finding it sweeter than he expected. Back home, I was working toward becoming Hokage, leader of my village. Thought that was a big responsibility. Now I'm supposed to save all of creation. Talk about a promotion. Bastet laughed, the sound oddly comforting in its normalcy. If it helps, I don't think any of us expected the first light to return as someone so human. Naruto suggested. I was going to say, interesting, she corrected, golden eyes studying him. Gods can be terribly boring, you know. Predictable. We fall into patterns over the centuries, the same conflicts, the same alliances, the same old grievances recycled endlessly. You don't seem boring, Naruto observed, earning a pleased smile from the goddess. I work at it, she admitted. It's why I spend so much time among humans. They change, grow, surprise me. Gods rarely do. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the temple walls with golden light. Can I ask you something? Naruto finally said. Something personal. By all means, Bastet encouraged, her tail swishing with curiosity. Why are you helping me? I mean, I get why Isis is involved, this whole cosmic balance thing is her jam. Thoth is basically the divine scholar, so new phenomena interest him. But you. He trailed off, unsure how to finish. Bastet's expression turned thoughtful. Several reasons, she said after a moment. Protection is my domain, of homes, children, mothers. What greater protection could I offer than aiding the force that might save creation itself? That explains the professional interest, Naruto acknowledged. But not why you're sitting here drinking wine with me at sunset. She smiled, and for a moment, something vulnerable flickered across her feline features. Because in 5,000 years, you're the first being who's made me feel unpredictable again. Who sees Bastet, not just the goddess of cats and protection. She shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. Also, you're not terrible to look at. Naruto felt heat rise to his cheeks that had nothing to do with divine energy. Oh. Thanks. Bastet laughed, the tension breaking. You should see your face. The mighty first light, blushing like a temple maiden. She stood in a fluid motion, extending a hand to help him up. Come on. Isis wants us to review the procession protocol one more time before dinner. As they walked back toward the temple, Bastet's hand lingered in his just a moment longer than necessary. Naruto found he didn't mind at all. Dinner that evening was a more elaborate affair than previous nights. Additional guests had arrived in preparation for tomorrow's journey, minor deities allied with Isis, priests of high ranking, and nobles from the royal court. All were intensely curious about the strange foreigner who glowed with divine light. Naruto had been dressed for the occasion in garments more elaborate than the simple kilt he'd been wearing. His new attire included a finely pleated white shendit, a type of kilt worn by nobility, a broad collar of gold and lapis lazuli, golden armbands, and a headdress that Isis insisted was the minimum acceptable for someone of his station. I look ridiculous, he'd complained when first presented with the outfit. You look divine, Isis had corrected firmly. Which is precisely the point. Now, seated at Isis's right hand at the head table, Naruto tried to remember all the etiquette rules while fielding questions from curious deities. Is it true you cut chaos spawn in half with a sword of pure light? Asked a minor goddess of brewing, her eyes wide with admiration. Something like that, Naruto admitted modestly. Though it was more of a chakra technique modified with light energy. Chakra? A falcon-headed god leaned forward with interest. This concept is unknown to us. Naruto launched into a simplified explanation of chakra as practiced in his world, demonstrating by creating a small, normal Rasengan above his palm. Fascinating, the Falcon God murmured. A energy system parallel to Heka, magic, yet distinct in its approach. And in your land, many humans can manipulate this chakra, asked a nobleman who had been introduced as the pharaoh's vizier. Most shinobi can, Naruto confirmed. Though not everyone has the same affinity or skill level. Tell us of your greatest battle, called someone from the lower tables. Before Naruto could answer, the main doors swung open, and a hush fell over the gathering. A tall, imposing woman entered, flanked by attendants carrying weapons. Her head was that of a lioness, but unlike Bastet's playful feline features, hers was a predator's visage, all sharp teeth and fierce eyes that glowed like embers. Sekhmet, Isis rose to greet the newcomer. We did not expect you until tomorrow's journey. Plans change, Sekhmet growled, her gaze fixed on Naruto. I came to see this light wielder for myself before the circus at Abu Gharaf begins. She approached Naruto's table, and the other deities scrambled to make room. Up close, he could feel the heat radiating from her, far more intense than Bastet's warm aura. This was the heat of destruction, of war itself. Stand, Lightbringer, she commanded. Naruto complied, meeting her gaze evenly. He'd faced enough intimidating opponents in his time to recognize a test when he saw one. You don't cower, she observed, circling him. Good. Divinity without courage is worthless. I've never been big on cowering, Naruto replied. Even when maybe I should have been. Sekhmet's mouth pulled back in what might have been a smile or a snarl, with her lioness features, it was hard to tell. They say you fought well against the Chaos Spawn. That you protected humans even before engaging the enemy directly. They needed help, Naruto said simply. I could give it. Sekhmet stopped her circling and faced him directly. Ra wishes to meet you before the gathering. Privately. A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembled guests. Isis stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral. Such an audience would traditionally occur at Abu Gharaf, under formal circumstances, she noted. These are not traditional times, Sekhmet countered. The Sunbark will dock at the Western Temple Quay at midnight. He expects the Lightbringer to attend alone. With that pronouncement, she turned and strode from the hall, leaving shocked whispers in her wake. As soon as the doors closed behind her, the room erupted in conversation. Isis guided Naruto to a side chamber where Thoth and Bastet waited, having observed everything from a discreet distance. This is unexpected, Thoth said, his ibis features unreadable. And suspicious, Bastet added, her tail lashing anxiously. Meeting Ra is one thing, but alone. At midnight? That's not how the sun god typically operates. Could it be a trap? Naruto asked. Maybe Set impersonating Ra or something. Unlikely, Isis said. The Sunbark cannot be commandeered or counterfeited. If Ra's vessel arrives, it carries Ra himself. Then I'll go, Naruto decided. Better to meet him one-on-one anyway. I've always done better with direct conversations than formal ceremonies. It's not that simple, Thoth cautioned. By meeting you privately, Ra removes the political buffer of the gathering. Whatever occurs between you will have no witnesses, no context for the pantheon to judge. Which could be good or bad, Bastet pointed out. If they connect, it sidesteps Set's carefully orchestrated judgment scenario. And if they don't? Naruto asked. Then Ra could declare you a threat before you ever reach Abu Gharaf, Isis said bluntly. With no allies present to speak in your defense. Naruto considered this, then shrugged. Still going. I've never been good at political maneuvering anyway. If Ra wants to meet me, I'll meet him. Simple as that. The three deities exchanged looks that suggested nothing was ever that simple in their world. But none argued further. Then we have a few hours to prepare you, Isis said. Thoth, what should he know about Ra that isn't in the formal briefings? Ra is tired, Thoth said carefully. 5,000 years of ruling the pantheon, of fighting Apophis each night as he travels through the underworld, of maintaining cosmic order, it has taken its toll. He is not senile or weak, but he has less patience than in earlier epochs. He's also proud, Bastet added. Being the most powerful god for millennia does that. The possibility of someone, anyone, surpassing him would be difficult to accept. Great, Naruto muttered. So I'm meeting a tired, cranky, proud sun god who might see me as a threat to his position. This'll go well. Be yourself, Isis advised unexpectedly. Ra has encountered every form of flattery and manipulation imaginable. Simple honesty might be the most disarming approach. That, Naruto grinned, I can definitely do. Midnight found Naruto standing alone on the western quay of the temple complex, a stone dock extending into the Nile. The night was clear, stars blazing overhead with an intensity rarely seen in his world. The water flowed dark and mysterious beneath a crescent moon. Naruto had changed from his formal attire back into a simple kilt and his own sandals, though he kept the gold armbands as a small concession to protocol. His Konoha headband remained firmly in place, a reminder of who he was and where he came from. He didn't have to wait long. A glow appeared on the horizon, not from the east, where dawn would eventually come, but from the west, where the underworld was said to begin. The light grew brighter, moving across the water with unnatural speed. Soon, Naruto could make out a vessel unlike any he'd seen before. It resembled an Egyptian boat in basic shape, but it appeared to be made of pure light, its structure constantly shifting and reforming. It left no wake as it moved, instead causing the water beneath it to glow with reflected radiance. As the sun bark approached, Naruto could see a single figure standing at its prow, a tall being with the head of a falcon crowned by a solar disk. Even at a distance, the power radiating from this entity was palpable, like standing too close to an open furnace. The vessel came to a stop at the quay, hovering just above the water's surface. No gangplank extended, no mooring lines were thrown. Instead, a path of light formed, connecting the boat to where Naruto stood. Approach, Lightbringer, a voice commanded, not loud, yet it seemed to fill the air and vibrate in Naruto's bones. Taking a deep breath, Naruto stepped onto the path of light. It felt solid beneath his feet despite its appearance. He walked steadily toward the sunbark, maintaining eye contact with the falcon-headed deity who watched his approach with unblinking golden eyes. When he reached the vessel, Naruto gave a respectful bow, not too deep, as Isis had advised for an initial meeting between powers of potentially equal stature. Divine Light of Heaven, he greeted Ra, using the formal address Isis had drilled into him. I am Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha. Ra studied him for a long moment, his gaze seeming to pierce through physical form to examine Naruto's very essence. Finally, he gestured to the deck beside him. Join me, Naruto Uzumaki. Let us speak as the bark continues its journey. Without waiting for a response, Ra turned and moved toward the center of the vessel where two throne-like seats had manifested. The sunbark began moving again, leaving the quay behind and heading into the open river. This is not what I expected, Ra said when Naruto had settled into the seat opposite him. His voice was deep and resonant, with harmonic undertones that no human throat could produce. When the omens spoke of the first light's return, I anticipated many possibilities. A human vessel was not among them. Yeah, well, I didn't exactly plan this either, Naruto replied honestly. One minute I'm fighting some weird ninja, the next I'm in ancient Egypt with gods telling me I'm some primordial cosmic force. Ra's beak couldn't smile, but something like amusement flickered in his golden eyes. Directness. How refreshing. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me, do you remember your existence before the void, the first definition, the separation of darkness from light? Pieces, Naruto admitted. Fragments that come in dreams or visions. It doesn't feel like me, exactly, but not separate either. Like remembering something I did when I was very young. Ra nodded as if this confirmed something. And the power? How does it manifest for you? It's different from chakra, the energy I used in my world, Naruto explained. Less structured, more fundamental. Like I'm not creating or shaping energy so much as revealing something that was already there. An apt description, RA approved. The first light does not create so much as define. Its power lies in making the potential actual. He studied Naruto again. Show me. Understanding this was another test. Naruto considered what demonstration would be most appropriate. A combat technique seemed wrong for the context. Instead, he extended his hand and concentrated. Light gathered above his palm, but instead of forming a Rasengan or weapon, it shaped itself into a perfect miniature replica of Konoha, the Hokage monument, the academy, the streets and buildings he knew so well. The model glowed with inner light, details sharper than any physical model could achieve. My home, Naruto explained simply. What I'm trying to get back to. RA examined the light construct with genuine interest. Remarkable. Not just light shaped to resemble something, but imbued with meaning, with memory. He looked from the model to Naruto. You've retained your human attachments despite the awakening. They're not just attachments, Naruto said. They're who I am. For now, RA said, and something in his tone put Naruto on alert. What's that supposed to mean? He asked, letting the light model of Konoha dissipate. RA leaned back in his throne. The essence awakening within you is older than individual consciousness as we understand it. It precedes identity, precedes the very concept of self as distinct from other. As it fully awakens, your human identity, your attachments, memories, desires, may become secondary. That's not happening, Naruto stated firmly. I'm not losing myself to some cosmic light bulb, no matter how primordial it is. Your determination is admirable, RA said, not unkindly. But you speak of fighting a process you don't fully understand. The first light isn't something foreign invading you, it is what you always were, beneath the temporary layers of human identity. If that's true, Naruto challenged, then why did it choose to become human in the first place? To fragment and hide within creation instead of remaining separate and all-powerful? Ra's eyes widened slightly, clearly surprised by the insight of the question. That is the great mystery. Why would consciousness, once achieved, choose limitation? Why would unity seek fragmentation? He shook his head. In all my millennia, I have found no satisfactory answer. Maybe, Naruto suggested, it was lonely. A long silence followed, broken only by the gentle sound of the bark moving through water. Lonely, RA repeated finally, testing the word. A human concept. A human emotion. Yet. He trailed off, seeming to consider the idea seriously. An interesting perspective. The sunbark had moved far from the temple now, traveling down the Nile toward the western desert. Above them, the stars wheeled in patterns unfamiliar to Naruto. The crescent moon cast a silver path across the water parallel to the golden one left by Ra's vessel. Why did you want to meet me before Abu Garaf? Naruto asked, changing the subject. Sekhmet made it sound pretty urgent. Because tomorrow's gathering is not what it appears to be, RA revealed. Set claims to seek consensus on addressing the omens and disturbances, but his true aim is more ambitious. He wants your job, Naruto guessed. RA inclined his head in confirmation. Set believes the Chaos Spawn attack and other disturbances prove I can no longer maintain cosmic order effectively. He will use the gathering to formally challenge my rule. And where do I fit into all this? You, Naruto Uzumaki, are the wild card neither of us anticipated, RA said frankly. The first light's return shifts the entire playing field. Set will try to position you as evidence of my failure, a power I cannot control emerging on my watch. He paused. I wish to take your measure directly, to determine whether you are ally, threat, or something else entirely. And what's your verdict? Naruto asked. Still forming, RA admitted. But I find myself, intrigued by your perspective. Most gods who have walked the earth for millennia lose touch with human concerns, human emotions. You seem to have reversed the process, bringing human understanding to divine power. He stood suddenly, moving to the edge of the bark. Come. There is something you should see. Naruto joined him at the vessel's edge. Below, the Nile had given way to desert sands, though they were still clearly moving over water. The landscape had changed completely. We have entered the Duat, the underworld, R.A. explained. Few living beings can travel here, but the sunbark makes its journey through these realms each night. The scene below shifted, revealing a vast expanse where countless human souls wandered in various states. Some seemed peaceful, others confused or distressed. Beyond them lay more territories, beautiful fields where happy spirits dwelled, stark wastelands where others suffered, strange cities populated by jackal-headed beings who guided or guarded the souls. The afterlife, Naruto breathed, awed despite himself. One of many, R.A. corrected. Each pantheon maintains its own realms for the dead. But all faced the same outer boundary. He pointed ahead, where the landscape ended abruptly in a wall of absolute darkness. The void. The uncreation that Apophis represents. As they approached this boundary, Naruto felt a chill unlike anything he'd experienced before. This wasn't just absence of heat but absence of everything, light, sound, meaning, possibility. Each night, I battle to maintain the boundary, R.A. said quietly. To keep the void from encroaching further, from consuming the realms of the dead and eventually the living world itself. Even as he spoke, movement became visible in the darkness, something massive coiling and uncoiling, a serpent of impossible proportions composed of anti-light. Where it touched the boundary, reality itself seemed to fray and dissolve. Apophis, Naruto whispered. Yes. R.A. raised his staff, which blazed with solar fire. And tonight, you will witness the battle that has repeated since the dawn of time. The sunbark approached the boundary, and Apophis sensed their coming. A head larger than a mountain emerged from the darkness, a serpent's head with eyes like collapsing stars, fangs that could tear through the fabric of reality itself. R.A., a voice hissed, bypassing the ears to echo directly in the mind. You bring a guest to your nightly defeat? How thoughtful. Return to the void, serpent, R.A. commanded, his form growing brighter. The bounds hold firm. For now, Apophis laughed, the sound causing ripples of uncreation to spread through nearby areas of the underworld. But you weaken, sun god. Each night, a little more. Soon. The serpent's attention shifted to Naruto, its impossible eyes focusing on him with sudden intensity. It hissed. The fragment returns. The first mistake seeks to compound itself. What's that supposed to mean? Naruto demanded, standing his ground despite the overwhelming presence of the Chaos Serpent. Ask your host, Apophis suggested with malicious amusement. Ask how creation began. Ask what choice was made, and whether it was the right one. Ra's staff blazed brighter, and he thrust it toward Apophis. Enough. Back to your prison, devourer. Light and anti-light clashed at the boundary, creating a spectacle so intense Naruto had to shield his eyes. The battle raged for what felt like hours but might have been minutes. Time seemed to function differently in this realm. Throughout the conflict, Naruto could feel something stirring within him, the light responding to its ancient enemy. Power built in his core, wanting release, wanting to join Ra's fight against the darkness. Without conscious decision, Naruto stepped forward, his body beginning to glow. The light wasn't coming from him so much as through him, as if he were a lens focusing something far greater. Naruto, R.A. warned, still locked in combat with Apophis, be cautious. Your power here could unbalance. I know what I'm doing, Naruto interrupted, though that wasn't entirely true. He was acting on instinct, on the fragmented memories surfacing from the light's essence. He raised his hands, and pure, concentrated light, brighter than anything he'd manifested before, shot from them toward Apophis. But instead of striking the serpent directly, the light formed a complex pattern in the air, a net of glowing symbols and geometric shapes. The old bindings, Apophis snarled, genuine alarm in its voice. You remember them. The pattern expanded, reinforcing the boundary between creation and void. Where Ra's light was offensive, burning, pushing back, Naruto's light was definitive, strengthening the very concept of separation between what was and what wasn't. For a brief moment, Apophis retreated, the massive serpent pulling back from the reinforced boundary. Ra seized the opportunity, launching a final assault that drove the chaos entity further into the void. As suddenly as it had begun, the battle was over. The boundary stabilized, though Naruto could see it remained dangerously thin in places. That was. Ra turned to him, genuine surprise evident even in his falcon features. You accessed the original bindings. The patterns that first defined existence against non-existence. Naruto swayed slightly, unexpectedly drained. I didn't exactly plan it. The knowledge was just there when I needed it. Ra steadied him with a talon-tipped hand. This changes matters considerably. He guided Naruto back to their seats as the sunbark began its return journey. You truly are awakening, and faster than I anticipated. Is that good or bad? Naruto asked, echoing his earlier question to Isis. That depends, Ra said carefully, on your intentions once fully awakened. My intentions haven't changed, Naruto insisted. Help stop Apophis, find a way home. That's it. And the reset? Ra pressed. The reabsorption prophecies speak of. Not happening, Naruto said firmly. Whatever the first light might have been planning before, it's stuck with my decisions now. And I'm not ending existence, resetting creation, or doing anything else along those lines. Ra studied him for a long moment. I believe you mean that, he said finally. Whether you'll still mean it when the light fully awakens remains to be seen. Before Naruto could argue further, the landscape below changed again, transitioning from the underworld back to the normal Nile. The temple quay where they had begun their journey appeared ahead. We have returned, Ra observed. Dawn approaches, and I must complete my circuit to bring the sun to the eastern horizon. As the sunbark docked, Ra rose from his throne. You have given me much to consider, Naruto Uzumaki. Your assistance against Apophis tonight was significant. Does this mean you're on my side at the gathering tomorrow? Naruto asked directly. Ra made a sound that might have been a laugh. Politics is rarely so simple, even for gods. Let us say I approach Abu Garaf with a more open mind than before. He gestured toward the quay. Your companions await. Sure enough, Naruto could see Isis, Bastet, and Thoth standing on the dock, trying, and failing, to look as if they hadn't been waiting anxiously for hours. One last question, Naruto said as he prepared to disembark. Apophis mentioned the first mistake and suggested I ask you about how creation began. What did he mean? Ra's expression became guarded. Apophis speaks in riddles meant to sow discord. I would not dwell on his words. That's not an answer, Naruto pointed out. No, Ra acknowledged. It isn't. Perhaps that conversation is best saved for after Abu Garaf, when we know where all pieces stand on the cosmic board. With that cryptic response, Ra inclined his head in farewell. As Naruto stepped off the vessel onto the quay, the sunbark immediately began moving again, accelerating rapidly as it headed eastward, its light growing brighter as it went. Well? Bastet pounced on him immediately. What happened? What did he say? Why do you look so drained? One question at a time, Bastet, Isis admonished, though she looked equally curious. We took a field trip to the underworld, Naruto explained, still processing everything himself. Saw Apophis. Fought it together. Kind of bonded over cosmic battle, I guess. You fought Apophis? Thoth's eyes widened in astonishment. And you're still standing? Remarkable. I think I impressed him, Naruto said, unsure if that was even the right word for what had happened. But he's still being cagey about something, about the beginning of creation and something Apophis called, the first mistake. The three deities exchanged significant looks. What? Naruto demanded. You know what that means, don't you? There are theories, Thoth admitted reluctantly. Ancient texts that speak of the initial separation of light from void as something Apophis views as a cosmic error. According to these accounts, Isis continued, Apophis believes consciousness itself, the self-awareness that allowed the first light to define itself against the void, was a mistake that shattered the perfect unity of non-existence. That's insane, Naruto said. Without consciousness, without separation, nothing would exist. Precisely Apophis's goal, Bastet said grimly. The return to undifferentiated nothingness. The undoing of the mistake of existence itself. Naruto ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the cosmological implications. So Apophis thinks I'm, or the first light is, responsible for existence, and wants to undo it all. In essence, yes, Thoth confirmed. Though how this relates to the prophecies of reset or reabsorption remains unclear. It'll have to remain unclear a bit longer, Isis interjected. Dawn approaches, and we must prepare for the journey to Abu Garaf. The gathering begins at midday. As if on cue, the eastern horizon began to lighten, Ra completing his nightly journey, bringing the sun back to the world of the living. Get some rest, Isis advised Naruto. You'll need your strength for what's to come. Rest, however, proved elusive. When Naruto returned to his chambers, his mind was too full of cosmic battles and ancient mysteries to allow sleep. Instead, he found himself on the balcony, watching the sunrise and trying to sort through everything. Kurama, he said aloud, reaching inward to the nine tails. You've been quiet. What do you make of all this? The fox materialized in his mindscape, lounging as if unconcerned, though Naruto could sense his agitation. I think we're in deeper than we realized, Kit, Kurama rumbled. This isn't just some random jutsu gone wrong or dimensional accident. Something intentional is happening. You think someone specifically wanted the first light to awaken now? When Apophis is breaking free? I think, Kurama said carefully, that cosmic forces don't operate on coincidence. The timing is too perfect. The chaos spawn attack, the political instability among the gods, Apophis gaining strength, and then you arrive, carrying the very power that once bound the void. But who would orchestrate something like that? And why? Kurama's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Consider who benefits. Not Ra, your emergence threatens his authority. Not Set, you disrupt his power play. Perhaps not even Apophis, who clearly sees you as a threat. Naruto frowned. Isis? Thoth? Bastet? They've been helping me. Perhaps, the fox allowed. Or perhaps someone else entirely. Keep your eyes open, Naruto. Gods play longer games than humans, or even tailed beasts. With that cryptic warning, Kurama retreated deeper into their shared consciousness, leaving Naruto with even more questions than before. The sun had fully risen when a soft knock at his door announced Bastet's arrival. She entered without waiting for a response, carrying a tray of food and a bundle of clothing. You didn't sleep, she observed, setting down the tray. I can see it in your eyes. Too much to think about, Naruto admitted, gratefully accepting the offered bread and fruit. Well, you'd better put on your thinking cap along with these, she said, unfolding the bundle to reveal elaborate ceremonial garments. Abu Garaf awaits, and we need to make quite the entrance. The clothing was more regal than anything Naruto had worn yet, a kilt of fine pleated linen with a gold-embroidered border, a broad collar inlaid with precious stones, armlets and bracelets of polished gold, and a headdress that incorporated elements of the sun disk while leaving room for his spiky hair and Konoha headband. The colors are significant, Bastet explained as she helped him dress. Gold for divinity, white for purity, blue for truth. The design suggests solar affiliation without declaring direct allegiance to Ra. You guys really overthink fashion, Naruto observed, adjusting the heavy collar. When your clothing can signal political alliances that might start divine wars, overthinking is prudent, she retorted, stepping back to assess the final effect. Perfect. You look halfway between a god and a human, exactly the message we want to send. Isis and Thoth joined them in the courtyard, both dressed in their full ceremonial regalia. Isis wore an elaborate gown of white linen with rainbow-hued wings attached to the arms, and her throne headdress gleamed in the morning sun. Thoth's ibis head was crowned with a lunar disk, and he carried scrolls and writing implements as symbols of his domain. Our entourage is ready, Isis informed them. We travel by divine bark to maintain your energy for the gathering itself. Divine bark? Naruto questioned. Like Ra's sun bark? Similar in concept, different in execution, Thoth explained. Each major deity maintains their own divine vessel for formal occasions. Isis's bark proved to be a magnificent boat moored at a private dock beneath the temple. Unlike Ra's vessel of pure light, hers was physical, crafted from cedar and gold, with sails of fine linen emblazoned with magical symbols. Yet it radiated its own kind of power, subtle, complex energies that shifted and adapted as they boarded. An honor guard of priests and priestesses accompanied them, along with minor deities allied with Isis. Bastet chose to ride with them rather than summon her own vessel, a decision that raised eyebrows among the divine attendants. Making a statement? Thoth murmured to her as they cast off. Several, she replied with a wink at Naruto. The journey downriver was swift, the divine bark moving faster than any normal vessel could manage. As they traveled, Isis provided last-minute coaching on the expected proceedings. The gathering will begin with formal presentations, she explained. Each major deity will enter with their retinue, in order of cosmic precedence. Ra first, then Set, then the rest of us. Where do I fit in that lineup? Naruto asked. That's the question everyone will be asking, Thoth noted. As the first light, you technically precede all of us in cosmic hierarchy. But as a newly emerged power, protocol would place you last. We'll enter with our own processions, Isis decided. You will accompany me as an honored guest, neither claiming highest status nor accepting lowest. After the processions, Set will formally open the gathering by stating its purpose, Bastet continued the briefing. He'll frame it as addressing the recent omens and attacks, but his true agenda will quickly become clear. He wants to replace Ra as head of the pantheon, Naruto recalled from his conversation with the sun god. Precisely, Isis confirmed. He'll argue that Ra's waning power has allowed these breaches in cosmic order, and that new leadership is needed. And my role is? Naruto prompted. To observe, initially, Thoth advised. Let the political maneuvering reveal itself. Various factions will attempt to claim you as evidence for their position. Ra may indicate your assistance against Apophis last night as proof of his continued effectiveness. Set may point to your very existence as proof of Ra's failure to maintain order. When the time is right, Isis added, you will be called upon to speak. At that moment, you must decide how much to reveal about your nature, your powers, and your intentions. Great, Naruto muttered. No pressure there. The divine bark rounded a bend in the river, and Abu Garaf came into view. Unlike the sprawling temple complex at Parare, this was a site built into the living rock of a massive cliff face. Enormous statues had been carved directly from the stone, seated figures with the bodies of humans and heads of various animals, each at least 100 feet tall. Between these colossal guardians, a ceremonial causeway led from the river to a temple entrance carved into the cliff itself. Already, other divine barks were docked at the elaborate quay, vessels of various designs reflecting their owners' domains. A boat of reed and animal hide that seemed to shift shape constantly, likely belonging to Set, a sleek, predatory craft of red gold that radiated heat, presumably Sekhmet's, a black vessel adorned with jackals, probably Anubis, god of funerary rites, and dozens more. Looks like we're not the first to arrive, Bastet observed as their bark approached the dock. Nor the last, Thoth noted, pointing to the eastern sky where a golden light approached, Ra's sunbark making a dramatic entrance. As they disembarked, Naruto felt the weight of countless eyes upon him, divine, human, and something in between. Priests scurried about, preparing for the formal processions. Minor deities clustered in groups, gossiping and speculating. Guards with the heads of various animals maintained order among the growing crowd. "It begins," Isis murmured, straightening her headdress. "Remember what we discussed. Dignity, restraint, and authentic power need no flamboyant display." "Got it," Naruto nodded. "Act like I belong here because I do, not because I'm trying to prove something." "Precisely," she approved. "Now, let us take our places. The procession will begin shortly." They moved to a designated waiting area, where Isis's retinue organized itself into ceremonial formation. Naruto found himself positioned just behind Isis, with Bastet at his right and Thoth at his left, a placement that made a clear statement about his importance without claiming the highest honor. Trumpets sounded, and a voice called out in a language older than the Egyptian Naruto had been understanding, "Let the gathering of divine powers commence. Let the gods process in order of emergence." The massive doors of the cliff temple swung open, revealing a vast hall carved from living rock. At its center burned a fire of impossible colors, not just consuming fuel but seeming to feed on reality itself. Ra processed in first, his falcon-headed form blazing with solar energy. He wore a crown combining the sun disk with tall plumes, and his staff left trails of light in the air as he walked. Behind him came a retinue of solar deities and divine servants, arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Set entered next, his strange animal head held high. Unlike Ra's golden radiance, Set exuded a different kind of power, primal, dangerous, the controlled chaos of desert storms and sudden violence. His followers included desert gods, warriors, and beings that shifted between human and animal forms with unsettling fluidity. One by one, the major deities entered with their processions: Osiris, god of the dead and rebirth, green-skinned and wrapped in white, radiating serene authority. Horus, the falcon-headed sky god, younger and more vibrant than Ra, representing divine kingship. Hathor, goddess of love and music, cow-horned and beautiful, her followers dancing as they processed. Sekhmet, whose fierce lion-headed form and blood-red garments made even other gods step back. Nephthys, Set's sister-wife, wreathed in protective shadows. Anubis, jackal-headed psychopomp, solemn and mysterious. Sobek, the crocodile god Naruto had met previously. Each procession was a spectacle of divine power and domain, carefully choreographed to display cosmic significance without directly challenging the hierarchy. When Isis's turn came, she stepped forward with regal grace, her rainbow wings catching the light dramatically. Thoth and Bastet flanked her initially, then dropped back to walk beside Naruto, a subtle but clear elevation of his status. As they entered the great hall, Naruto felt something respond within him to the central fire. The light beneath his skin pulsed in rhythm with the flames, creating a visible aura around him that drew gasps and whispers from the assembled deities. "The light responds to the eternal flame," someone murmured. "See how they recognize each other." They took their places in the circular arrangement around the central fire. Ra occupied the position of highest honor, with Set opposite him, the traditional placement of cosmic rivals. Isis guided her procession to a neutral position between several factions, allowing them to interact with all parties without declaring allegiance. When all had assembled, Set stepped forward to formally open the gathering. "Divine powers, eternal beings, maintainers of cosmic order," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. "We gather in the shadow of unprecedented events. The Nile runs with blood. Chaos breaches the mortal realm. Ancient powers stir from slumber." His red gaze fixed briefly on Naruto before continuing. "These are not random occurrences but symptoms of a fundamental imbalance in the cosmic order." Murmurs of agreement rippled through certain sections of the gathering. For 5 millennia, Set continued, Ra has led our pantheon with the power of the sun. His light has maintained the boundary between order and chaos, between creation and void. But all things change. All powers evolve. All cycles reach their natural conclusion. The implication hung in the air, daring someone to challenge it directly. Ra remained impassive, his falcon features revealing nothing. Recent events demonstrate that the current arrangement no longer serves creation effectively, Set pressed. The time has come to consider whether new leadership might better address the challenges we face. You speak of change, Set, Osiris interjected, his voice calm but carrying authority, yet omit that change does not always require replacement. Adaptation, perhaps. Cooperation, certainly. But usurpation? He shook his head. That seems premature. Is it usurpation to seek what is best for all creation? Set countered smoothly. I propose not personal aggrandizement but necessary evolution. The cosmos itself signals that change is required. And what of the light bringer? Sekhmet demanded, her fierce gaze fixing on Naruto. His emergence is the most significant omen of all. What says he about this, necessary evolution? All eyes turned to Naruto, the conversation shifting faster than Isis had predicted. He felt her tension beside him, sensed Bastet's protective instincts flaring. But this was why he was here, to speak his own truth, not play a role in someone else's game. He stepped forward, the light within him responding to his resolve by glowing more intensely. I'm still figuring out what I am and why I'm here, Naruto began honestly. I didn't ask for these powers or this connection to your world. But last night, I stood with Ra against Apophis at the boundary of creation, and I saw something important. The hall fell silent, even Set watching with calculated interest. The threat isn't about who leads or who follows, Naruto continued. It's about the boundary itself, the separation between what is and what isn't. That boundary is weakening, and arguing about who gets to sit in the fancy chair won't fix it. You oversimplify, Lightbringer, Set argued, though without hostility. Leadership determines response. Ra's approach has failed to maintain these boundaries you speak of. Has it? Naruto challenged. Or is something else happening, something bigger than any single deity's authority? He turned to address the entire gathering. The First Light's memories are coming back to me in pieces, and they suggest this isn't about Ra's leadership or Set's ambition. This is about a fundamental shift in creation itself. Thoth stepped forward, lending his scholarly authority to the discussion. The ancient texts speak of cosmic cycles, ages of creation that rise, stabilize, and eventually transform. If we have entered such a transformation, mere changes in pantheon leadership would indeed be insufficient. Convenient theories, Set observed dryly, that preserve the status quo. Or inconvenient truths that demand more from all of us than political maneuvering, Isis countered, moving to stand beside Naruto. The debate might have continued along these lines, but a disturbance at the entrance to the Great Hall interrupted. A minor deity, one of Ra's solar attendants, stumbled in, his light dimmed and flickering. Attack, he gasped. The quayside, chaos forces, breaking through, before he could finish, the massive doors exploded inward. Through the dust and debris came figures that twisted the eye and mind, chaos spawn like those that had attacked Prare, but larger, more defined, more purposeful. Behind them strode humanoid figures in armor that seemed made of compressed darkness, wielding weapons that left tears in reality where they swung. The hall is breached. Sekhmet roared, instantly ready for battle. To arms. The formal gathering dissolved into chaos as deities moved to defend the sacred space. Ra and Set, political rivals moments before, immediately positioned themselves at the forefront, cosmic power blazing from both. Secure the eternal flame. Thoth shouted above the commotion. If it's extinguished, the protections of Abu Garaf fall completely. Naruto didn't need to be told twice. He created dozens of light clones that formed a defensive perimeter around the central fire. The original Naruto joined RA and sat at the entrance, light energy gathering around his hands. These are not mere spawn, RA observed grimly as they faced the invaders. These are directed forces, extensions of Apophyse's will. Agreed, Set nodded, sands swirling around him as he prepared his own powers. The serpent grows bold indeed to attack a full gathering of the Pantheon. The chaos forces surged forward, meeting the combined might of Egypt's greatest gods. The battle that ensued was unlike anything Naruto had experienced, power meeting power on a scale that threatened to tear the fabric of reality itself. Sekhmet became a whirlwind of destruction, her lion form growing to massive proportions as she literally devoured chaos entities. Osiris and Anubis combined their underworld powers to open abyssal pits that swallowed ranks of armored figures. Isis and Nephthys wove protective spells around the more vulnerable members of the gathering. Thoth maintained the integrity of the hall itself, preventing the chaos energies from corrupting its structure. In the midst of this divine battlefield, Naruto found himself fighting alongside RA and Set, the three of them forming an unexpected triumvirate against the main thrust of the chaos forces. "Behind you!" Naruto shouted, launching a light Rasengan that intercepted a chaos weapon aimed at Set's back. Set nodded in thanks, then unleashed a sandstorm that flayed the outer layers from a group of advancing chaos warriors. Ra's solar staff swept in blazing arcs, each strike banishing enemies back to the void. Yet for each one defeated, more poured through the breached entrance. "There's too many," Naruto called out, even as he formed light constructs to reinforce weakening points in their defense. "We need to close the breach they're coming through." "Agreed," RA shouted back. "But closing such a tear requires specific knowledge, the original bindings that separate realms. Like what I used last night at the boundary?" Naruto asked, deflecting a chaos blade with a light shield. "Precisely," RA confirmed. "But on a larger scale, focused on the source." "I might be able to do it," Naruto said, already accessing the strange cosmic knowledge that had been awakening within him. "But I'd need to get closer to wherever they're coming from." "A suicidal proposition," Set interjected, his desert magic creating a momentary buffer zone around them. "The tear likely exists beyond this hall, at the weakest point in Abu Garafa's defenses." "Then we find that point," Naruto insisted. "Or more keep coming until we're overwhelmed." RA and Set exchanged looks, political rivals finding unexpected agreement in crisis. "The Chamber of Beginnings," RA decided. "Beneath this hall. It contains symbols of the original creation, making it both the strongest and potentially weakest point in the defenses." "I know the way," Set said. "But reaching it through this chaos." "I'll clear a path," Naruto promised, his body beginning to glow more intensely as he accessed deeper reserves of the light's power. What followed was a fighting retreat through the embattled hall, Naruto, RA, and Set forcing their way toward a hidden entrance while the rest of the Pantheon held the main forces at bay. Bastet noticed their movement and broke from her position to join them, her feline agility allowing her to dance through the chaos battlefield unscathed. "Where are you going?" she demanded, falling in beside Naruto. "To the source," he explained quickly. "There's a breach we need to close." "Then I'm coming too," she declared, brooking no argument. "Someone needs to watch your back while you work your light magic." The four of them, Naruto, Bastet, RA, and Set, reached a seemingly solid wall at the far end of the hall. Set pressed his hand against it, murmuring words in a language even older than the one used for the gathering ceremonies. The wall dissolved, revealing a spiraling staircase descending into darkness. "The Chamber of Beginnings lies below," RA explained as they hurried down the steps. "It contains symbols and artifacts from the first moment of creation, things of immense power that predate even our pantheon. Including fragments of the first light itself," Set added, glancing at Naruto. "Pieces you left behind when you fragmented." The staircase seemed to descend forever, passing through layers of reality that grew increasingly strange. The stone walls gave way to substances Naruto couldn't identify, materials that seemed to flicker between solid and energy, between matter and concept. We're passing through symbolic realms, Bastet explained, noting his confusion. Representations of creation's layers, from the concrete physical world to the abstract foundations. Finally, they reached a chamber unlike any Naruto had seen. It appeared infinitely vast despite having visible walls, a spatial paradox that hurt his brain to consider. At its center floated objects that seemed both ancient artifacts and living concepts, a feather that contained the weight of truth, an egg that continuously hatched and reformed, a scale that balanced light against darkness, and most striking of all, a small golden sphere that radiated light identical to what now flowed through Naruto. A fragment of yourself, Ra indicated the sphere. Left as anchor and reminder. But Naruto's attention had already shifted to the far wall, where reality itself seemed to be peeling away. Through the tear, a familiar darkness could be seen, the void where Apophis dwelled. Serpentine forms were pushing through, widening the breach with each passage. There, he pointed. That's where they're coming from. The seal weakens, Ra observed grimly. The original bindings fail. Then we renew them, Naruto said with determination, moving toward the breach. As he approached, the golden sphere at the chamber's center responded, floating toward him as if drawn by magnetic attraction. When it reached him, it didn't stop but passed directly into his chest, merging with his essence seamlessly. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Knowledge flooded Naruto's mind, not fragments or echoes now but complete understanding of who and what he had been. The first light. The original consciousness. The definer of existence against non-existence. He remembered it all, the void, uninterrupted and perfect in its nothingness. The first stirring of awareness. The declaration, I am, that created the possibility of something existing separately from nothing. The expansion that followed, defining light against darkness, order against chaos, being against non-being. And he remembered Apophis, not as enemy initially, but as the necessary opposite. The no to his yes. The cannot to his cien. The complement that made definition possible. But somewhere, somehow, that complement had become corruption. The natural opposition had transformed into existential threat. Apophis had decided that separation itself was a mistake, that consciousness was a cosmic error to be corrected by returning all to the perfect void. Naruto. Bastet's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you still with us? He blinked, returning to the immediate crisis. His body now glowed so brightly that the others had to shield their eyes. I remember, he said simply. I know what to do. Moving with newfound certainty, Naruto approached the breach. The chaos entities attempting to squeeze through recoiled from his radiance, retreating back toward the void. Behind them, a massive presence gathered, Apophis himself, drawn by the awakening light. Fragment, the chaos serpent's voice echoed through the breach. You remember now. You understand the error. I remember, Naruto agreed, raising his hands toward the tear. But you're wrong about it being an error. Light poured from him in structured patterns, not random energy but precisely formed symbols and geometries that represented the fundamental separation of existence from non-existence. The original bindings, renewed and strengthened by conscious intent. This changes nothing, Apophis hissed as the binding patterns began to close the breach. The pattern is set. The cycle completes. You will absorb and reset, as you have before. Not this time, Naruto countered, pushing more power into the bindings. This time is different. I'm different. Impossible. The light always returns. Always resets. Always begins again. The serpent's words triggered another flood of memories, cycles of creation, periods of separate existence followed by reabsorption and renewal. Had he really done this before? Created, observed, then reset everything back to unity? Don't listen to him. Bastet shouted, seeing Naruto hesitate. He twists truth to serve his purpose. But Ra and Set remained silent, watching with expressions that suggested Apophis's claims weren't entirely false. Naruto's concentration wavered, and the binding patterns faltered. Apophis surged forward, pushing more of his essence through the weakening breach. Yes, the serpent exulted. You begin to see. The cycle is natural. Inevitable. Surrender to it. For a moment, doubt clouded Naruto's mind. What if this was the natural order? What if the prophecies of reabsorption weren't threats but simply descriptions of cosmic necessity? Then, cutting through the doubt, came another voice, familiar, gruff, and decidedly unimpressed with cosmic destiny. Since when do you let someone else tell you what you're going to do? Kurama demanded, his presence surging within Naruto's consciousness. Since when is Naruto Uzumaki bound by cycles and patterns? The Nine Tails was right. Whatever the first light might have done in previous cycles, Naruto Uzumaki made his own destiny. Always had, always would. Nice try, Snake, Naruto said, his resolve hardening. But I don't care what happened in previous cycles. This one plays by my rules. With renewed determination, he poured his combined power, chakra, Nine Tails, and light essence, into the binding patterns. The symbols glowed with unprecedented intensity, not just closing the breach but reinforcing the very concept of separation that maintained reality. Apophis shrieked in rage and pain as the breach contracted, forcing his essence back into the void. This changes nothing. The cycle cannot be broken. You will reset. You will always reset. As the last of the tears sealed itself, Naruto added a final flourish to the binding patterns, the symbol of the Hidden Leaf Village, worked into the cosmic geometry as his personal signature. Maybe the first light always reset things before, he said to the now sealed boundary. But I'm Naruto Uzumaki too. And I don't give up, and I don't go back on my word. That's my ninja way. With the breach closed, the chaos forces above would be cut off from their source, making them easier for the Pantheon to defeat. But Naruto knew the victory was temporary. The binding would hold for now, but Apophis would find other weak points, other breaches. He turned to face Ra, Set, and Bastet, all of whom were staring at him with varying expressions of awe, concern, and calculation. The cycle Apophis mentioned, Naruto said directly. The resets. They're real, aren't they? Ra and Set exchanged looks before Ra spoke. According to our oldest texts, yes. Creation has existed in cycles. Each begins with the light defining itself against darkness, proceeds through ages of separate existence and complexity, then eventually returns to unity when the light reabsorbs all that is. How many times? Naruto asked. Unknown, Set replied. Perhaps countless. The texts speak of the current cycle as the seventh great breathing, but whether that is literal or metaphorical is unclear. And that's why some fear my return, Naruto realized. Because it might signal the end of this cycle. The reset. Yes, Ra acknowledged. Though the timing of the reset has never been predictable. Some cycles lasted what humans would count as billions of years. This won't be ending on my watch, Naruto stated firmly. Whatever happened in previous cycles, I'm breaking the pattern. You believe you can? Set asked, not challenging but genuinely curious. Even as the light fully awakens within you? I have to, Naruto said simply. Too many people I care about, too much worth protecting, both in this world and my own. Bastet moved to stand beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. For what it's worth, I believe him. He's not just the first light returning, he's something new. The light with a human heart. The Chamber of Beginnings shuddered suddenly, reminding them of the battle still raging above. We should return, Ra decided. The breach is sealed, but the chaos forces already in our realm must still be dealt with. They ascended the spiral staircase, emerging into a great hall transformed by conflict. The polished floors were cracked, columns had collapsed, and divine blood, in colors no human had ever seen, stained the ancient stone. But the tide had turned. Without connection to their source, the chaos forces were being systematically destroyed or banished by the combined might of the pantheon. Isis and Thoth maintained the integrity of the eternal flame while Sekhmet, Horus, and others pressed their advantage against the weakening invaders. By the time Naruto, Ra, Set, and Bastet rejoined the battle, it was nearly finished. The last Chaos Warriors fought with desperate ferocity but ultimately fell or fled through diminishing tears in reality that sealed themselves as Naruto approached. When the final enemy had been banished, an exhausted silence fell over the hall. Gods and goddesses stood amid the devastation, assessing wounds, checking on allies, processing what had occurred. The formal grandeur of the gathering had been shattered, leaving something more raw and honest in its place. Isis approached Naruto, her rainbow wings tattered but her eyes sharp as ever. "You closed the breach." With help, he nodded toward Ra, Set, and Bastet. "It won't hold forever, but it buys us time." "Time for what?" Thoth asked, joining them. The ibis-headed god's feathers were singed, and he leaned more heavily on his staff than before. "To figure out a more permanent solution," Naruto said. Apophis mentioned a cycle, resets that have happened before. "I need to understand that better if I'm going to break the pattern." Thoth's eyes widened. "Break the, you cannot be serious." "Completely serious," Naruto confirmed. "I'm not resetting creation, not wiping the slate clean. Whatever the first light did in previous cycles, this one's different." "Because you are different," Isis observed thoughtfully. "The human vessel has changed the equation." "Exactly," Bastet exclaimed. "That's what I've been saying. He's not just the light returning, he's the light evolved." Set, who had been listening silently, suddenly laughed, a sound that startled those nearby. "How fitting. Chaos has always maintained that change is necessary, that stagnation leads to corruption. Perhaps this is the ultimate proof, even the first light itself needed to change, to become something new." The gathering of gods began to coalesce around them, drawn by the conversation and by Naruto's still glowing presence. Political divisions remained, but they had been temporarily superseded by the shared experience of defending creation itself. The Lightbringer closed the breach, Ra announced to the assembled pantheon. His knowledge of the original binding saved Abu Garaf, and perhaps all creation. Murmurs of approval spread through the gathering. "But the threat remains," Set added, smoothly positioning himself as a necessary voice of caution. "Apophis grows stronger. The boundaries between realms weaken. Today's attack was unprecedented, a direct assault on a full gathering of the pantheon." "What would you suggest, Set?" Osiris asked, his tone neutral but watchful. "You called this gathering to discuss leadership. Does your position change in light of these events?" Set considered this, his red eyes calculating. "Perhaps," he said finally. "Traditional hierarchies may not serve us in this crisis. Perhaps, a council approach would better address the multiple fronts of this threat." It was a political masterstroke, claiming the high ground by appearing to set aside personal ambition for the greater good, while still achieving his goal of diminishing Ra's sole authority. Ra, to his credit, recognized the maneuver but chose not to counter it directly. "Wisdom often emerges from crisis," he acknowledged. "A council of powers, focused on specific aspects of our defense, has merit." The political discussion might have continued along these lines, but Naruto stepped forward, his patience for divine politics exhausted. "Look," he interrupted, drawing all eyes. "You guys can figure out your leadership structure later. Right now, we need to focus on three things: strengthening the boundaries between realms, understanding why Apophis is gaining power now, and figuring out what these reset cycles are all about." "The Lightbringer speaks practically," Sekhmet approved, her bloodied form still radiating battle heat. "Action, not deliberation." "Both have their place," Thoth countered. "Research into the ancient cycles must accompany direct defense." As the gods began debating approaches and priorities, Naruto felt a strange sensation building within him. The fragment of the light he'd absorbed in the Chamber of Beginnings continued to integrate with his essence, bringing more memories, more understanding, and more power. Light began pouring from him in waves, not aggressively but transformatively, changing the very quality of the space around him. The damaged hall started to repair itself, cracks sealing, columns reforming, even divine blood disappearing as if it had never been spilled. Naruto. Bastet's voice reached him through the growing radiance. What's happening? He wasn't entirely sure himself. The process felt natural but overwhelming, like he was becoming more fully what he had always been meant to be. The first light, yes, but shaped by human experience, human connections, human heart. I think, he managed to say as the light continued to build, I'm accepting what I am. What I need to be. The gathered gods backed away as the radiance intensified, creating a circle of empty space around Naruto. Only Bastet and Isis remained close, concern evident in their expressions. Don't lose yourself, Bastet urged. Remember who you are, not just what you are. I remember, Naruto assured her, his voice somehow both his own and something more. I remember everything now. The cycles of creation. The original separation from the void. The long ages of watching existence unfold. The gradual diminishment of connection, of meaning, that had led to previous resets. The first light had never destroyed creation out of malice but out of loneliness, out of the growing sense that separate existence had failed to achieve its purpose. But this cycle was different. This time, the light had not merely observed from without but experienced from within. Through Naruto's human life, his struggles, his connections, his growth, the light had discovered what had been missing in previous cycles. I understand now, Naruto said, the radiance finally stabilizing around him. Why I'm here. What I need to do. His appearance had subtly changed. He still looked like Naruto Uzumaki, but his features had taken on an otherworldly quality, more defined, more perfect, as if the concept of Naruto had been distilled to its essence. His eyes glowed golden, no longer just reflecting light but generating it from within. And what is that? Ra asked, a mixture of awe and apprehension in his voice. Not to reset creation, Naruto replied with absolute certainty. But to evolve it. To bring the next phase of existence into being, one where connection doesn't diminish over time but grows stronger. Where consciousness doesn't separate us but unites us through understanding. A new cycle without reabsorption. Thoth's academic mind raced with the implications. Unprecedented. Impossible, Set countered, though he sounded less certain than usual. The pattern is established. The light always returns to unity. Patterns can be broken, Naruto said simply. I've been breaking them all my life. He reached out with his newly expanded awareness, feeling the currents of reality flowing around and through him. The knowledge of how to reset creation was there, the understanding of how to draw all light back into himself, returning existence to the void. But alongside it now existed a different possibility, a path never taken in previous cycles. I choose a different way, Naruto declared, both to the assembled gods and to the cosmic forces he now perceived. Not reabsorption, but reconnection. Not ending separate existence, but enriching it. As he spoke, light flowed from him into the great hall, not just repairing physical damage but strengthening the conceptual foundations beneath it. The gods could feel it, a reinforcement of their domains, their connections to creation and to each other. He's not just talking, Isis realized, her magical senses perceiving the changes. He's actually doing it, rewriting fundamental patterns. The process continued for what felt like both moments and eternity, time itself bending around the significance of what was occurring. When it finally subsided, Naruto stood at the center of a transformed hall, the sacred space now more real, more defined, more connected to both physical and divine realms than it had been before. He swayed slightly as the light receded to more manageable levels, his appearance returning closer to normal. Bastet was at his side instantly, supporting him. Did you just rewrite cosmic law? She asked, half joking, half serious. Just edited it a bit, Naruto replied with a tired grin. Added some new clauses, strengthened some old ones. The imprint of your essence is everywhere, RA observed, examining the transformed space with divine senses. You've bound your consciousness into the fabric of creation itself. Not just mine, Naruto corrected. Everyone's. That's the point, connection, not separation. A network, not a hierarchy. The implications weren't lost on the political-minded among the pantheon. This wasn't just a metaphysical adjustment but a fundamental shift in how divine power might operate. This changes everything, Thoth murmured, already envisioning centuries of research into the new paradigm. It's a start, Naruto acknowledged. But only that. Apophis still threatens the boundaries. The void still seeks to reclaim what emerged from it. And He hesitated. I still need to find a way home, to my own world and time. After what you've just done, Isis said, that may be considerably easier. The connections between realms should now be more accessible, more navigable for one with your awareness. But not immediately, Naruto guessed, reading her careful phrasing. No, she admitted. Such journeys require preparation, especially if you wish to arrive at a specific place and time rather than randomly. So I'm still here for a while, Naruto summarized. Still needed to help defend against Apophis. If you're willing, RA said, his tone making it clear this was a request, not an assumption. A significant change from his previous approach. Naruto looked around at the gathered gods, beings of immense power who had just witnessed something unprecedented, whose cosmic understanding had been challenged and expanded by his actions. He saw fear in some, hope in others, calculation in many, but also a new respect, a recognition that the first light had evolved beyond what any of them had anticipated. And he looked at those closest to him, Isis with her enigmatic wisdom, Thoth with his scholarly curiosity, RA with his ancient authority tinged now with uncertainty. And Bastet, whose golden eyes held something more personal, more emotional than divine politics could encompass. I'll stay, Naruto decided. For now. Help strengthen the boundaries, figure out why Apophis is gaining power, and prepare for whatever comes next. But eventually, I am going home. To your Konoha, Bastet said softly, a question in her eyes that went beyond words. Yes, Naruto confirmed, holding her gaze. But that doesn't mean any of this, ends. The connections I've made here, the changes we've started, they continue. He turned to address the entire gathering once more. The first light didn't return to end this cycle but to transform it. I'm still figuring out exactly what that means, but I know this much, we're stronger together than separated. Against Apophis, against entropy, against the void itself. It wasn't a formal speech or a political declaration but a simple statement of intent, Naruto's way, direct and uncompromising. Yet it carried more weight than any divine proclamation, resonating with the changes he'd already begun in the fabric of reality itself. The gathering of divine powers had been called to address omens and political succession. It was ending with something far more significant, the first steps toward a new cosmic paradigm, guided by a being who was both the oldest force in creation and a young ninja with an unbreakable spirit. As the formal proceedings concluded and the gods began to disperse, discussing implications and forming new alliances, Naruto stepped away from the center of attention. He found a quiet corner where he could process everything that had happened, the awakening of his full nature, the memories of countless cycles, the choice he'd made to break the pattern. Bastet joined him there, her playful demeanor subdued by the magnitude of recent events. So, she said, settling beside him. The first light with a human heart. What happens now? Honestly? Naruto ran a hand through his spiky hair, a gesture so human it seemed almost incongruous with the cosmic being he had revealed himself to be. I have no idea. I've never broken a multi-billion-year cycle before. She laughed, the sound bringing a welcome return to normalcy. Always the pioneer, aren't you? First human to merge with a tailed beast as a partner rather than a prisoner. First divine essence to choose evolution over reset. When you put it that way, I sound almost competent, he joked. You are far more than that, Bastet said, suddenly serious. You are hope, Naruto Uzumaki. Hope that patterns can be broken, that destiny isn't fixed, that even the most fundamental forces can choose a different path. Her words struck him deeply, resonating with his own long-held beliefs. All his life, he had refused to accept limitations others placed on him, refused to be just the Nine-Tails container, just the orphan troublemaker, just the failed student. He had always believed in forging his own path. Now he was doing it on a cosmic scale. One day at a time, he said, the simple human wisdom feeling right even for divine challenges. First, we strengthen the boundaries against Apophis. Then we figure out why he's gaining power now. Then we see about getting me home. And along the way, Bastet added with a sly smile, perhaps you discover more about being both human and divine. About connection. About possibilities. The warmth in her golden eyes left little doubt about the nature of the possibilities she was suggesting. Naruto felt heat rise to his cheeks that had nothing to do with cosmic light. I'd like that, he admitted, surprising himself with his directness. You've been important to me since I arrived here. More than just a guide or ally. Bastet's smile widened, a purr of satisfaction rumbling in her throat. Good, she said simply. Because I have 5,000 years of experience to share, and you, Lightbringer, have much to learn about the pleasures of divine existence. As the sun began to set over Abu Garaf, casting the sacred site in golden light, Naruto felt a strange peace settling over him despite the challenges ahead. He had accepted what he was, the first light reborn, evolved, transformed by human experience. He had chosen a new path for himself and potentially for all creation. Whatever came next, battles with Apophis, divine politics, the search for a way home, he would face it as both Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha and the first light of creation. Not two separate identities at war, but a single being with the wisdom and power of both. The edge of divinity wasn't a boundary to fear but a horizon to explore. And he wouldn't be exploring it alone. Chapter 3, Cosmic Renaissance. Naruto stood at the edge of the Nile, watching the sunrise paint the water with gold and crimson. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Abu Garaf, 3 weeks of intensive training, research, and preparation. His reflection in the river showed a face that looked the same yet fundamentally changed, golden light occasionally flickering beneath his skin like lightning under storm clouds. Still brooding? Bastet's voice carried from behind him. She approached with her characteristic feline grace, barefoot on the riverbank. Planning, Naruto corrected, turning to face her. Big difference. The weeks since Abu Garaf had transformed their relationship. What began as mentorship had evolved into something deeper, moments stolen between cosmic responsibilities, nights spent talking about everything from ninja techniques to divine history, touches that lingered longer each time. Bastet brushed sand from his shoulder, her golden eyes searching his. Thoth thinks he's found something in the ancient archives. Something about Apophis's prison. About time, Naruto grinned. I was starting to think those scrolls were just fancy toilet paper. She laughed, the sound warming him more than the Egyptian sun. Such disrespect for ancient wisdom. Thoth would have a stroke if he heard you. Can gods even have strokes? Metaphorical ones, she winked. We should head back. The council's gathering at midday. The council was new, a direct result of the events at Abu Garaf. Rather than the traditional hierarchy with Ra at its peak, the Egyptian pantheon had reorganized into a more collaborative structure. Ra and Set co-led on matters of cosmic defense, while Isis, Thoth, and others formed specialized groups addressing different aspects of the Apophis threat. And at the center of it all, belonging to every group yet bound by none, stood Naruto, the first light with a human heart. They walked together back toward Prare, where the main temple complex had been converted into a divine headquarters. Egyptian citizens bowed as they passed, many making the new gesture of respect that had spontaneously emerged, fingers spread to represent rays of light. Still feels weird, Naruto muttered as a group of children performed the gesture before running off, giggling. Being worshipped? Bastet asked. You'll get used to it. I really won't, he insisted. Back home, people finally stopped seeing me as the Nine-Tails container and started seeing me as just Naruto. Now I've got a whole new, not human, label to deal with. Bastet's expression softened. Yet that humanity is precisely what makes you different from the other gods. What makes you special? Before Naruto could respond, a messenger falcon swooped down, landing on his outstretched arm with practiced ease. These divine messengers had become commonplace as the pantheon coordinated efforts across Egypt. From Isis, he noted, reading the small scroll attached to the bird's leg. Change of plans. Meeting moved up. They found something significant. The falcon dissolved into light as soon as its message was delivered, one of the many magical conveniences Naruto had gradually accepted as normal in this world of gods. Race you there? Bastet challenged, already shifting partially to her more feline form. Not fair, Naruto complained, though he was already gathering light energy beneath his feet. You've had thousands of years to practice. And you're literally made of primordial light, she countered. Seems balanced to me. With that, she transformed fully into her lioness form and took off across the landscape. Naruto laughed and followed, using the lightspeed movement technique he developed during his training. To observers along their path, they appeared as little more than a golden streak and a tawny blur racing across the desert. The council chamber hummed with divine energy when they arrived, slightly breathless and still bantering about who had won their impromptu race. The space had been redesigned since Abu Garaf, less formal throne room, more practical command center. A massive table carved from a single piece of celestial stone dominated the center, with positions for each major deity. Currently, it displayed a glowing, three-dimensional map of Egypt with pulsing points indicating disturbances or breaches. The Lightbringer arrives, RA acknowledged from his position at the table. The falcon-headed god had changed subtly since their first meeting, his light burned more steadily now, less brittle, as if a great tension had eased within him. Sorry we're late, Naruto said, taking his place at the position that belonged to neither head nor foot of the table but somehow connected to all points equally. Your messenger said you found something important. Thoth stepped forward, looking more animated than Naruto had ever seen the usually composed ibis-headed god. He carried ancient scrolls that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. These texts, Thoth began without preamble, predate our dynasty. They come from the first time, the Zep Tepi, when the original separation between order and chaos was established. Older than Egypt itself? Isis clarified for Naruto's benefit. Indeed, Thoth confirmed. They speak of Apophis's nature and prison in terms I've never encountered before. Not as a serpent to be defeated nightly, but as a fundamental force that requires balance, not opposition. That matches what I've been sensing, Naruto said, leaning forward with interest. During our encounters, I keep getting the feeling that Apophis isn't just some villain to punch harder. He's more like, the other side of an equation. Precisely. Thoth's excitement grew. According to these texts, Apophis was never meant to be imprisoned as we've understood it. The original design, your design, First Light, created a system of balance where void and creation existed in dynamic equilibrium. So what changed? Set asked, his red eyes narrowing. Why has Apophis been our enemy for millennia? Thoth's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. That is less clear. The texts suggest a great disruption that occurred after the light fragmented. Something that shifted the balance and transformed Apophis from complement to adversary. All eyes turned to Naruto, who felt memories stirring within his cosmic consciousness, fragmentary images of a time before the current age. I remember, parts of it, he said slowly. After the first light fragmented, there was a period of adjustment. The newly formed gods were figuring out their domains, their relationships. Something happened during that time. A conflict, Isis suggested, her magical senses picking up resonances from Naruto's awakening memories. A misunderstanding that became institutionalized over eons. Or a deliberate action, Set countered, ever suspicious. Someone who benefited from turning balance into battle. Ra remained silent, his golden eyes unreadable, but Naruto noticed a tension in his posture that hadn't been there before. Whatever happened, Naruto redirected the conversation, what matters now is how we fix it. If Apophis was supposed to be in balance, not imprisoned, then we need to restore that original design. Easier theorized than accomplished, Osiris spoke for the first time. The green-skinned god of death and rebirth rarely attended council meetings, preferring to manage the underworld directly. His presence today signaled the seriousness of the situation. Apophis has been warped by millennia of hatred and battle. Simply removing constraints may unleash destruction beyond imagining. Which is why we need to understand exactly what the original balance looked like, Naruto insisted. Thoth, do those scrolls describe it? The ibis-headed god spread the ancient papyrus carefully on the table. They speak of a nexus, a point where light and void could interact without either overwhelming the other. A place called the crossroads of being. I know that place, Naruto said immediately, the name triggering another cascade of memories. Or I did. It exists at the junction of multiple realms, not just our world and the void, but all possible worlds. Including your home world? Bastet asked quietly, voicing what several had been wondering. Maybe, Naruto nodded. If we can find this crossroads again, it might solve both problems, restoring the balance with Apophis and finding me a way home. These scrolls contain partial directions, Thoth continued, but they're cryptic. They speak of following the first ray through the darkest night and where Alpha meets Omega at the cusp of never. Cosmic poetry, Set scoffed. Useless for practical navigation. Not useless, Naruto corrected. Just not meant for normal perception. He stood, extending a hand over the scrolls. Light flowed from his fingers, interacting with the ancient text in ways visible only to divine senses. The others watched in fascination as patterns emerged, geometric configurations that existed beyond three-dimensional space, coordinates in a system that predated conventional reality. I can find it, Naruto announced after studying the revealed patterns. But getting there won't be simple. The crossroads exists outside normal space-time. We'd need to create a pathway. A pathway through what, exactly? Sekhmet demanded, her lioness features twisted in suspicion. Through the layers of reality, Naruto explained. Think of existence like an onion. Physical reality is just the outermost layer. Beneath that are conceptual realms, symbolic domains, the fundamental patterns that shape everything. The crossroads exists at the core, where all layers intersect. Creating such a pathway would require immense power, Ra observed. Even for the combined pantheon. Which is why we won't all go, Naruto decided. A smaller group has a better chance of success. Me, obviously. And those with domains that connect to fundamental forces or transitions between realms. The council erupted into debate about who should accompany him. After much discussion, they settled on 4 companions, Isis for her mastery of magic and transformation, Thoth for his knowledge of cosmic patterns, Bastet for her protection domain and personal connection to Naruto, and, surprisingly, Set, whose chaos domain made him uniquely attuned to the boundaries between order and void. 5 travelers, Osiris noted. A powerful number for transitions. When do you depart? Naruto looked at the map on the table, where the disturbances had grown more numerous in recent days. Chaos incursions were increasing despite their best defensive efforts. Tonight, he decided. At the dark of the moon. When the boundary between realms is naturally thinnest. Ra nodded in agreement. The Pantheon will maintain defenses while you undertake this journey. But be warned, Apophis will sense your movement. He will try to intervene. Counting on it, Naruto grinned. Can't restore balance if one side doesn't show up for the meeting. As the council dispersed to prepare, Isis approached Naruto privately. The goddess of magic had become one of his closest advisors, helping him navigate both divine politics and his awakening powers. "There's something you're not sharing," she observed quietly. "Something about this crossroads." Naruto glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. "The scrolls don't tell the whole story. The crossroads isn't just a place of balance, it's where I made the decision to fragment in the first place. Where the cycles began." Isis's eyes widened slightly. "You remember that choice now?" "Pieces of it," he admitted. "Enough to know that returning there means facing a decision point again. The place is designed that way. To force consciousness to choose." "And what will you choose, Naruto Uzumaki?" she asked, studying him intently. "When faced with the same crossroads that previously led to fragmentation and cycles of reset." He met her gaze steadily. "Something new. That's why I need you with me, Isis. Your magic understands transformation better than anyone's. You see possibilities where others see only established patterns." The goddess seemed moved by his trust. "We walk into the unknown together, then." "As it should be." Preparations consumed the rest of the day. Naruto spent hours with Thoth, reviewing what little was known about the crossroads and the original balance. The ibis-headed god brought scroll after scroll, many in languages no mortal had ever seen, piecing together fragments of cosmic history. The original separation was an act of love, Thoth observed, translating one particularly ancient text. The light didn't divide reality out of loneliness, as some theories suggest, but out of the desire to create relationship, to know and be known. "That tracks with what I remember," Naruto agreed, sifting through his awakening cosmic memories. "Existence without relationship is empty. I think that's why previous cycles ended with reabsorption. When connection diminished beyond a certain point, the purpose of separation seemed lost. Yet you believe this cycle can avoid that fate?" "I have to," Naruto said simply. "Too much worth preserving." Later, he sought out Set for a different kind of preparation. The red-eyed god of chaos had been surprisingly supportive since Abu Garaf, setting aside political ambitions to focus on the greater threat. His understanding of chaos, not as destruction but as potential for change, provided insights no other deity could offer. "Apophis isn't evil," Set explained as they stood in his desert sanctuary. "No more than I am, despite what temple paintings might suggest. Void isn't the enemy of creation, it's the canvas upon which creation occurs. The space that allows movement and change." "So why does he want to unmake everything?" Naruto asked, genuinely curious. Set considered this, sand swirling thoughtfully around his feet. "Perhaps he doesn't, in his true nature. Perhaps what we've fought for millennia is Apophis corrupted by imbalance, just as I was once corrupted into killing Osiris. You think restoring balance will restore his original nature?" "I think," Set said carefully, "that nothing exists in isolation. Light needs shadow. Order needs chaos. Being needs the possibility of non-being to define itself. If those relationships become distorted, everything suffers." In the late afternoon, Naruto met with Ra privately. Though no longer the unquestioned leader of the pantheon, the sun god's experience remained invaluable. "There's something you haven't told the others," Ra observed as they walked through his solar gardens. "About the first mistake." Naruto looked sharply at him. "You know about that?" "I have my own memories of the early days," Ra replied. "Fragmented, like your own, but present. Apophis spoke of the first mistake during your confrontation at the boundary. I've wondered what he meant." Naruto sighed, cosmic weariness momentarily showing through his youthful exterior. "The mistake wasn't creating separation, as Apophis believes. It was allowing separation to become isolation. When the first light fragmented, the pieces, the gods, the realms, eventually the individual souls, gradually forgot their connection to the source. To each other. And that forgetting led to conflict, Ra surmised. To Apophis as imprisonment and corruption. I think so, Naruto nodded. But I don't fully remember. I'm hoping the crossroads will restore those memories, show me what actually happened, not just what we all believe happened. R.A. studied him for a long moment. And if what you discover contradicts 5,000 years of cosmic understanding? If our entire pantheon has been operating on false premises? Then we adapt, Naruto said simply. Truth matters more than tradition. The sun god laughed suddenly, a sound rarely heard from him. No wonder you transformed the light. Such human directness. Such courage. As sunset approached, Naruto finally sought out the one person who had become most important to him in this strange new existence. He found Bastet in her private sanctuary, a lush garden where exotic plants grew alongside statues of cats from every era of Egyptian history. She sat cross-legged beside a reflecting pool, seemingly deep in meditation. Unlike her usual playful demeanor, her expression showed intense concentration. Preparing for tonight? Naruto asked softly, not wanting to startle her. Her eyes opened, golden irises finding his immediately. Yes. My domain is protection, but where we're going stretches the definition of what can be protected, at all. He sat beside her, their shoulders touching lightly. Having second thoughts about coming? Not even slightly, she replied, a hint of her usual mischief returning. Someone needs to keep you from doing something impossibly heroic and self-sacrificing. You have that tendency, you know. Me? Never, he grinned, though they both knew she was right. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun's last rays paint the garden in amber and gold. Naruto, she finally said, using his name rather than one of her many nicknames for him. Whatever happens at the crossroads, whatever choice you face. Remember what makes you different from the previous incarnation of the light. My devastatingly good looks, he quipped. She swatted his arm playfully but continued seriously. Your connections. Your bonds. The previous light observed from outside. You experience from within. That changes everything. He turned to face her fully, struck by the wisdom in her words. When did the cat goddess get so philosophical? I contain multitudes, she replied with a wink. 5,000 years gives you time to develop hidden depths. Unable to resist any longer, Naruto leaned forward and kissed her. She responded immediately, a purr of satisfaction rumbling in her throat. What had begun as affection between allies had blossomed into something neither had anticipated, a connection that transcended both human and divine understanding. When they finally separated, Bastet's eyes glowed with inner light that matched his own. That, she said breathlessly, was worth waiting 5 millennia for. Just warming up, Naruto promised, though they both knew deeper exploration would have to wait. The dark of the moon approached, and with it, their journey to the crossroads. As midnight neared, the 5 travelers gathered at a location Naruto had identified, a forgotten temple deep in the western desert, half buried by sand and time. Unlike the magnificent structures at Primordial or Abu Gharaf, this site predated dynastic Egypt entirely. Its weathered stones bore symbols no modern scholar could decipher, the original language of creation itself. The first temple, Thoth breathed in awe as they approached. I thought it lost to the sand centuries ago. It was, Naruto confirmed. But the pattern remains in the fabric of reality. I could feel it once I knew to look for it. The ancient structure consisted of a single circular chamber open to the sky, surrounded by 12 pillars arranged like the hours on a clock face. At the center stood a simple stone platform, unmarked except for a small depression in its exact center. The interface point, Isis identified, her magical senses detecting the cosmic significance of this unassuming spot. Where the physical realm connects to deeper layers. What do you need from us? Set asked pragmatically, surveying the temple with narrowed eyes. Form a pentagon around the central platform, Naruto instructed. Each of you represents an essential aspect of reality that must be present at the crossroads: magic, knowledge, protection, transformation. I'll stand at the center as the connecting principle. As they took their positions, Naruto felt the cosmic awareness within him expanding. This place resonated with his deepest nature. It had been designed by the first light itself as a doorway between layers of reality. The dark of the moon reaches its peak in moments, Thoth observed, studying the night sky. The void between stars grows strongest now. Naruto nodded, stepping onto the central platform. When I begin the process, it will attract attention, both from other deities and from Apophis. Whatever happens, stay in formation until the pathway fully forms. He knelt at the center of the platform, placing his palm over the small depression. Light began to flow from his hand, filling the indentation and spreading outward in intricate patterns across the stone. The symbols matched those from the ancient scrolls, but now they moved and shifted, responding to his conscious intent. I call upon the original pathways, Naruto intoned, his voice resonating with power that transcended the physical realm. By the authority of the first light, I open the way to the crossroads of being. The temple responded immediately. Light spread from the platform to the surrounding pillars, which began to glow with inner radiance. The spaces between them shimmered, reality turning translucent as deeper layers became visible. Through these 12 apertures, impossible landscapes appeared, realms that existed beyond physical space. Through one, an ocean of liquid light, through another, a forest of crystalline trees, through a third, a city built from pure mathematical concepts rather than matter. The adjacent realms, Thoth identified, his scholarly excitement breaking through his usual composure. The layers between our world and the crossroads. As the process continued, Naruto felt resistance building, not from the temple mechanism itself but from something vast and external. Apophis had sensed their effort and was responding. He comes, Naruto warned the others. Whatever happens, maintain the pentagon. The night sky above the open temple darkened beyond natural blackness. Stars winked out one by one as something vast moved across the heavens, not physically present but exerting influence from the void beyond. Lightbringer, Apophis's voice resonated directly in their minds. You seek the crossroads. The place of decision. I do, Naruto responded, continuing the activation sequence without pausing. To restore what was broken. To remember what was forgotten. Nothing is forgotten, the cosmic serpent countered. I remember all. The first mistake. The false separation. The prison of individuality. The temple shuddered as pressure built against it, Apophis attempting to disrupt the pathway formation. The other four gods strained to maintain their positions, their divine energies forming a protective barrier around the activation site. Hold steady. Isis called out, her rainbow-hued magic reinforcing the weakening areas. The pathway is nearly complete. Naruto pushed more power into the activation sequence, light pouring from his entire body now. As he did, more memories surfaced, the original creation of this temple, the pathways it connected, the purpose it served before being buried and forgotten. This was never meant to be hidden, he realized aloud. The pathways were supposed to remain open, allowing constant balance between realms. Who closed them? Bastet demanded, her protective domain flaring as she reinforced her section of the pentagon. I don't, Naruto began, but another memory interrupted him, a vision of conflict, of fear, of a decision made in haste rather than wisdom. It was during the early conflicts. Someone, one of the first gods, feared Apophis would use these pathways to invade. They sealed them all, severing the connections between realms. Thus trapping Apophis in the void, Set concluded, understanding dawning. Converting balance into opposition. Complement into enemy. Yes, Apophis confirmed, his mental voice almost eager now. You begin to see the truth, Lightbringer. Not as the Pantheon has taught it, but as it was. The activation reached its crescendo. The 12 apertures between pillars fully opened, creating a mandala of interconnected realms surrounding them. From the central platform, a column of pure light shot upward, parting the unnatural darkness Apophis had spread across the sky. Now! Naruto commanded. Everyone moved to the center platform. The four gods abandoned their positions and rushed to join Naruto at the center. The moment they all stood together, the light column expanded to envelop them entirely. Reality shifted. The physical temple disappeared, replaced by the sensation of moving at impossible speed through layers of existence. Colors no human eye could perceive flashed around them. Concepts rather than objects formed their surroundings. The very fundamentals of reality peeled away one by one, revealing deeper truths beneath. Throughout this transition, Naruto maintained focus, guiding their journey through his innate connection to these pathways. The others huddled close, their divine natures providing some protection against the disorienting effects of transdimensional travel. Then, abruptly, they arrived. The crossroads of being defied simple description. It appeared simultaneously as an infinite expanse and a confined space, a nexus where countless pathways intersected without overlapping. Reality here was malleable, responding to consciousness rather than physical laws. At the center stood a structure, or perhaps more accurately, a concept given form. It resembled a tree, a fountain, a flame, and a throne all at once, shifting based on how one perceived it. From it, countless threads of light extended outward in all directions, connecting to every realm and every being in existence. The source, Isis whispered in awe. The point from which the light first expanded. The connection nexus, Thoth added, his scholarly mind struggling to categorize what his divine senses perceived. Every soul, every reality, every possibility, all connected here. Naruto approached the central structure, feeling a profound resonance with it. This was where it had begun, where consciousness had first declared, I am, and separated itself from the void. Where the first light had chosen to create relationship through differentiation rather than remain in solitary awareness. I remember this place, he said softly. I remember, creating it. Before the others could respond, the space around them darkened. Not with absence of light but with the presence of something that existed before light, the primordial void, given consciousness and purpose. Apophis manifested, not as the monstrous serpent of Egyptian mythology but as a presence both familiar and alien. To Naruto's awakened senses, it appeared almost like a negative image of himself, the space between stars given awareness. At last, Apophis's voice came not as an intrusion but as a natural counterpart to Naruto's own thoughts. Face to face, as in the beginning. As it should be, Naruto agreed, surprised by how right this felt. The animosity he had expected was absent, replaced by the recognition of necessary complement. You were never meant to be my enemy. Nor you mine, Apophis acknowledged. Until the pathways closed. Until balance became battle. The other gods watched this exchange with mixtures of confusion and dawning understanding. Thousands of years of cosmic mythology were being rewritten before their eyes. Who closed the pathways? Bastet demanded, unwilling to accept revelation without explanation. Who created the imbalance? I did. The voice came from behind them. They turned to see Ra step from one of the countless pathways that led to the crossroads, not the Ra who had helped prepare their journey, but a manifestation of his consciousness drawn directly to this place by the conversation. Or rather, Ra clarified, his falcon features solemn, my earliest incarnation did. Before I was fully formed as the deity you know. Explain, Set demanded, sand swirling agitatedly around his feet. Ra approached slowly, his light dimmed by what appeared to be genuine remorse. When the first light fragmented, creating the gods and realms, I emerged as one of the first conscious entities. My domain became light in the physical realm, the sun, the day, illumination. I believe this made me the light's primary heir. But Apophis existed as the necessary counterpart, Thoth surmised, pieces falling into place. The void from which light distinguished itself. Yes, Ra acknowledged. I saw his existence as a threat to my dominance. When conflict first arose between newly formed consciousnesses, I blamed the void's influence. I convinced the other early gods that Apophis sought to unmake creation, that the pathways between realms were dangerous conduits for his power. "So you closed them," Naruto said, memories of this ancient betrayal now returning fully. "Sealed the connections that maintained balance." "With the other god's support, yes," Ra admitted. "We believed we were protecting creation. Instead, we damaged the very foundation it stood upon." "You imprisoned half of existence," Apophis added, his voice devoid of the malice that had characterized previous encounters. "Without connection to the light, the void grew distorted. Corrupt. Antagonistic. As did you," Naruto said to Ra, understanding flowing through him. "Without connection to the void, light became rigid. Hierarchical. Afraid of change." Ra bowed his head in acknowledgement. "Over millennia, I forgot the truth. Convinced myself and others that the nightly battle against Apophis was how reality had always been structured. That opposition, not balance, was the natural state. The revelation hung in the air, 5,000 years of cosmic conflict explained by one misguided decision made in the chaotic early days of creation. So the first mistake wasn't separation from the void, Naruto realized. It was the closing of the pathways. The conversion of complementary forces into opposition. "Yes," Apophis confirmed. "The mistake was isolation, not creation." Bastet stepped forward, practical as always. "Understanding the cause is one thing. Fixing it is another. Can the original balance be restored after so much time? After both sides have been corrupted by isolation?" All eyes turned to Naruto, who stood at the center of the crossroads. The first light returned to its point of origin. He moved toward the central structure, the source, and placed his hand upon it. The countless threads of light connecting to all existence brightened in response, revealing the complex web of relationships that underlay reality itself. The connections were never actually broken, Naruto observed, seeing the truth through his awakened perception. Just obscured. Forgotten. The pathways can be restored because they still exist at the fundamental level. But should they be? Thoth asked, ever the voice of careful scholarship. After 5,000 years of development based on the current paradigm, would restoration create greater disruption? Not restoration, Naruto corrected. Evolution. The original balance was perfect for its time, but both creation and void have changed since then. We need something new, a third option beyond either the original balance or the current opposition. He turned to Apophis, seeing the void entity not as enemy but as essential counterpart. You've been fighting to return to the original state. To undo what you see as the first mistake. But that would erase 5,000 years of growth and development, painful as some of it has been. What alternative exists? Apophis questioned. Continued isolation? Corrupted purpose? Integration, Naruto suggested. Not returning to how things were, not continuing as they are, but moving forward into something new. Connection without loss of identity. Relationship without absorption. The concept hung in the space between them, radical, unprecedented, yet resonating with truth. This was the path Naruto had glimpsed at Abu Garaf, the evolution rather than reset that had never been attempted in previous cycles. How would such integration function? Ra asked, skepticism mixing with cautious hope. The void and creation have developed in opposition for millennia. Through conscious choice, Naruto replied. Through representatives who understand both sides. He looked at the gods who had accompanied him. Isis, whose magic transforms one state into another without losing essence. Thoth, whose knowledge encompasses both light and darkness. Set, whose chaos contains the seeds of both destruction and creation. Bastet, whose protection preserves identity while allowing connection. And you, Bastet added softly. The light with a human heart. Who understands separation and unity from within, not just from without. Naruto nodded, turning back to the source. Through his connection to it, he could sense all of creation, every realm, every being, every possibility. Including, he realized with a surge of emotion, his home world. Konoha existed as one of countless realities connected to this central point, accessible through the proper pathway. I can reshape the connections, he said, certainty growing within him. Not eliminate them like before, not leave them as they are now, but transform them into something new. A network where light and void interact without either dominating. Where balance comes through relationship, not separation or absorption. This has never been attempted, Thoth warned. The cosmic implications are exactly why it must be tried, Naruto interrupted. The cycles of creation and reset have repeated because we keep making the same fundamental choices. It's time for something new. He looked to Apophis, understanding that this transformation required consent from both primal forces. Are you willing to try a third path? Neither domination nor destruction, but integration. The void entity seemed to consider this, its presence shifting through states no physical being could comprehend. The cycles have grown. Predictable, Apophis finally responded. Perhaps. Evolution is preferable to repetition. With that tentative agreement, Naruto turned to his companions. This will require all of us. Each representing an aspect of the new integration. Each holding part of the pattern while I reshape the connections. They moved into position around the source, forming a pentagram with Naruto at its apex. Each god contributed their essence to the working, Isis her transformative magic, Thoth his integrative knowledge, Set his creative chaos, Bastet her adaptive protection. Ra stood apart, witnessing but not directly participating, representative of the old paradigm observing the birth of the new. Naruto placed both hands on the source, allowing his dual nature to fully manifest, the first light and Naruto Uzumaki in perfect harmony, neither dominating the other. Through this unified consciousness, he began the transformation. Light flowed from him into the source, then outward along all the connection threads simultaneously. But this wasn't simple illumination, it was conscious, purposeful restructuring. Where the connections had been rigid, they became flexible. Where they had been severed, they rewove with new patterns that accommodated both light and void. Apophis contributed his essence as well, the void flowing alongside the light rather than opposing it. Together, they reshaped the foundations of reality itself, not destroying and rebuilding, but transforming what already existed into something more balanced, more integrated. The process was taxing beyond anything Naruto had attempted. Sweat beaded on his brow as he maintained concentration on billions of simultaneous adjustments across all of existence. The other gods strained similarly, each holding portions of the cosmic pattern during its transformation. Almost, there. Naruto gasped, pushing through the final phase. Just need to stabilize the new configuration. At that crucial moment, when the transformation balanced on the edge between success and catastrophic failure, Naruto felt something unexpected, support flowing into him from beyond the crossroads. The Egyptian pantheon, sensing the cosmic shift, was contributing their power. And not just them, gods from other traditions, elemental forces, even the collective consciousness of humanity itself. All lending strength to the transformation, all choosing connection over isolation. With this unprecedented cosmic consensus, the new pattern locked into place. Light surged through the completed network in a wave of transformation that rippled outward through all realms and all times simultaneously. At the crossroads, the effect was immediate and visible. The source changed form, no longer shifting appearance but stabilizing as a new configuration, a double helix of light and void, intertwining without merging, distinct but inseparable. From this transformed center, the connection threads shimmered with dual nature, channels for both creation and potential, being and non-being. Naruto stumbled backward, caught by Bastet before he could fall. The other gods looked similarly drained but awed by what they had witnessed and helped create. It's done, Naruto breathed, his voice hoarse with exertion. The integration is complete. Not just complete, Thoth observed, his scholarly senses already analyzing the new configuration. Self-sustaining. This pattern doesn't require constant maintenance like the old opposition. It evolves naturally. Because it's based on relationship, not control, Isis added, her magical perception catching nuances the others missed. Each thread, each connection point, contains the capacity for adaptation within parameters. Apophysa's presence shifted, somehow both less and more than before, no longer the antagonistic serpent of mythology, but not quite returning to primordial void either. Something new had emerged. I feel different, the entity communicated, its voice changed from overwhelming force to balanced resonance. Connected yet distinct. Void yet purposeful. As you were always meant to be, Naruto said. Necessary complement, not existential threat. Ra approached cautiously, his divine senses assessing the transformation. The implications for our world, for all worlds, are profound. The cosmic balance we've maintained through opposition for millennia is evolving, Naruto completed for him. Not ended, just transformed. Your role remains essential, Ra. Just different now. Partnership rather than endless battle. The falcon-headed god nodded slowly, acceptance gradually replacing 5,000 years of ingrained patterns. It will take time to adjust. For all of us. Time we now have, Bastet pointed out, still supporting Naruto who leaned against her, exhausted but triumphant. Without the cycles of reset, without the constant battle against void. Time to grow rather than merely survive. Naruto's gaze drifted to the countless pathways extending from the crossroads, each leading to a different realm, a different reality. One in particular called to him, resonating with familiarity and belonging. The path to Konoha. To home. You can see it, can't you? Thoth asked, following Naruto's gaze. The way back to your world. Yes, Naruto confirmed. Now that the connections are restored, the path is clear. A heavy silence fell as the implications settled over the group. Naruto's mission here, unforeseen and unplanned as it had been, was complete. The balance was restored, evolved into something new and sustainable. The cosmic crisis had been averted not through battle but through transformation. There was no longer a reason for him to remain. Bastet's arm tightened around him slightly, her golden eyes reflecting complex emotions. So this is where our paths diverge, she said softly, voice steady despite the pain evident in her expression. Not diverge, Naruto corrected gently. Connect differently. He gestured to the transformed source with its network of interconnected threads. That's the whole point of what we just did. Nothing is truly separate anymore. All paths connect at the center. That's true in cosmic terms, Isis observed. But in practical reality. In practical reality, I'm going home, Naruto acknowledged. Back to the people waiting for me, the life I was building. But that doesn't mean ending what we've created here. He turned to face his companions fully, these beings who had started as strange mythological entities and become true friends, allies, even more. The new configuration allows for something that wasn't possible before, conscious movement between connected realms. Not just for cosmic entities but eventually for others as pathways stabilize and develop. You mean visits, Set clarified, his usual skepticism tempered by the evidence of cosmic transformation surrounding them. I mean connection, Naruto corrected. Ongoing relationship. Different from constant presence, yes, but not absence either. He looked directly at Bastet, whose expression remained carefully controlled. I'm not choosing between worlds or between identities. I'm integrating them, just like we integrated light and void. Naruto Uzumaki and the First Light. Konoha and Egypt. Past and future. A beautiful vision, Thoth commented. But the practical implementation will be complicated, messy, and totally worth figuring out, Naruto interrupted with a grin that was pure Uzumaki determination. That's kind of my specialty, you know. The impossible stuff. The tension broke, and Bastet laughed despite herself. That it is, Lightbringer. That it is. How long before you leave? Isis asked, practical concerns asserting themselves. Not immediately, Naruto assured them. The pathway needs to stabilize, and there's still work to do in Egypt, helping everyone adjust to the new cosmic balance, establishing protocols for the reconnected realms. Plus, he added with characteristic directness, I have unfinished business with a certain cat goddess. Bastet's eyes widened slightly before a slow, pleased smile spread across her features. Days at minimum, she purred. Possibly weeks. Set made a disgusted noise, though there was no real heat behind it. Cosmic entities discussing their mating habits. How delightful. Don't be jealous, Bastet shot back. It doesn't suit your chaos aesthetic. As they bantered, Naruto felt something he hadn't expected, a sense of peace. Of rightness. The cosmic burden he had carried since arriving in this world hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed, just like the source itself. No longer a weight of impossible responsibility but a connection of ongoing relationship. We should return to Egypt, Thoth suggested after a moment. The Pantheon will be anxious for news, and the effects of our working here will be manifesting across all connected realms. Naruto nodded, taking one last look around the crossroads, this place of decision that had changed everything twice now. First when the light chose fragmentation, creating existence as they knew it. And now when that same light, shaped by human experience and heart, chose integration instead of reset. Ready when you are, he said, turning back to his companions. Let's go explain to the Pantheon why they won't be fighting a cosmic snake every night anymore. The journey back followed the same pathways but felt entirely different. Where before they had traveled through separation, now they moved through connection. The realms they passed were no longer isolated layers but integrated aspects of a greater whole. When they emerged back into the physical world, the ancient temple had transformed. Once half buried and forgotten, it now stood fully restored, 12 pillars gleaming in the light of a new day. The central platform had become a smaller version of the source they had seen at the crossroads, a double helix of light and void, spinning in perfect balance. And waiting for them, arrayed around the temple perimeter, stood the entire Egyptian pantheon. Gods and goddesses who had sensed the cosmic shift and gathered to witness its aftermath. Their expressions ranged from awe to confusion to cautious hope. Ra stepped forward to address them, naturally assuming the role of interpreter between old and new paradigms. The balance is restored, he announced. But not as it was in the beginning. Something new has been created, an integration of forces once opposed. Murmurs spread through the assembled deities as they struggled to comprehend the implications. Apophis is no longer our enemy? Sekhmet demanded, her warrior nature bristling at the concept. Apophis is no longer anyone's enemy, Naruto clarified, stepping up beside Ra, nor are we his. The void and creation exist in relationship now, not opposition. And what does this mean for us? Osiris asked the practical question on many minds. For our domains, our purposes, our interactions with humanity. Evolution, not revolution, Naruto assured them. Your essential natures remain, but how they express and interact will gradually transform. The night journey through the underworld continues, but as communion, not battle. Questions flew rapidly after that, practical concerns, theological implications, procedural adjustments. Naruto, Isis, Thoth, and the others answered as best they could, though many details would need to be worked out through experience rather than explanation. Throughout the discussion, Naruto remained aware of one simple truth that he hadn't yet shared with the wider pantheon, that his time in their world was limited. That soon he would follow the pathway back to Konoha, carrying the light's transformed essence with him. That revelation could wait for another day. For now, there was work to do, helping an entire pantheon and their human worshippers adjust to cosmic transformation. Ensuring the new balance stabilized properly. Preparing Egypt and its gods for a different relationship with existence itself. And perhaps most importantly, making the most of the time he had left with those who had become precious to him in this strange, unexpected journey. 3 weeks later, Naruto stood at the edge of the Nile once more, watching another sunrise paint the water with gold and crimson. But unlike the morning when this chapter began, he wasn't alone with his thoughts. Bastet lounged nearby, her human form relaxed in the early light. Isis stood a few paces away, her rainbow wings catching the sun's rays. Thoth sat cross-legged on the riverbank, making final notes in an ever-expanding scroll. Set remained standing, sand swirling gently around his feet in unconscious manifestation of his domain. The pathways have stabilized, Thoth announced, completing his calculations. The connection to your realm is ready for transit. And your timing is auspicious, Isis added. According to my divination, you'll return to your world just moments after you left it, despite the weeks you've spent here. Convenient, Set observed dryly. Almost suspiciously so. Or perhaps, Bastet suggested, exactly as it should be. The first light returning to exactly the moment of departure. Naruto said nothing for a moment, taking in the Egyptian landscape one last time, the river, the temples, the distant pyramids catching the first light of day. So different from Konoha's forests and mountains, yet now connected to his essence just as deeply. I've made arrangements with the Pantheon, he finally said, turning back to his companions. Regular communication through the restored pathways. Cultural exchange between realms once the connection strengthened further. A new relationship between worlds that were once entirely separate. All very logical and structured, Bastet purred, stretching languorously. But what about the personal connections? Those aren't covered by diplomatic protocols. Naruto smiled at her directness. The weeks since their return from the crossroads had transformed their relationship from tentative romance to something deeper, a connection that transcended both human and divine categories. Those, he said, meeting her golden gaze, are between us to maintain. And I have every intention of doing so. Good, she replied simply. Because cats don't share well, and I've claimed you. Set made another disgusted noise. If the romantic farewell is complete, perhaps we could proceed. Some of us have cosmic duties to attend to. Always in such a rush, Isis chided him. 5,000 years of the same routine, and suddenly you can't spare 5 minutes for a proper goodbye. The Chaos God's red eyes narrowed, but a hint of something like affection showed through his gruff exterior. These weeks of working together had changed all of their relationships in unexpected ways. It's not goodbye, Naruto reminded them, echoing what he had said at the crossroads. Just, see you later. A different kind of connection. He stepped forward, embracing each of them in turn, even Set, who suffered the human gesture with surprising grace. When he came to Bastet last, their embrace lingered, conveying promises words couldn't adequately express. Ready? Thoth asked when they finally separated. Naruto nodded, moving to stand at the center of the small ritual circle they had prepared, a miniature version of the temple configuration, designed to access the pathway to his home realm. Any last wisdom for the road, he asked, looking around at these beings who had become family in the strangest of circumstances. Don't forget to eat your vegetables. Bastet suggested with feigned innocence. Try not to reset creation accidentally, Set added dryly. Remember that you carry both natures now, Isis said more seriously. The light and the human. The balance between them is yours to maintain. Thoth activated the circle, causing symbols to glow around Naruto's feet. The pathway opens. Focus on your destination, not just the place but the exact moment. Your consciousness will guide the transit. Naruto closed his eyes, concentrating on that final moment before his displacement, the enemy ninja, the strange jutsu, the feeling of being pulled apart and reassembled. His body began to glow, light emanating not just from his skin but from deeper layers of his being. I'll be back, he promised as the light intensified. Count on it. We'll hold you to that, Bastet called as his form began to dissolve into pure light. We know where you live now, universe-wise. Her laughter was the last thing Naruto heard as the transportation completed, sending his consciousness streaking along the restored pathways between realms. Unlike his chaotic arrival in Egypt, this journey was controlled, directed, purposeful. He flew through layers of reality, past alternative worlds and possible futures, following the thread that connected to his own timeline, his own place. Throughout the journey, he maintained his dual awareness, Naruto Uzumaki and the First Light, integrated rather than competing, human and divine in balanced harmony. Then, with a sensation like waking from a dream while still remembering every detail, he rematerialized exactly where he had departed, in the midst of battle, facing the enemy ninja whose strange jutsu had started this entire adventure. Time seemed frozen for an instant as Naruto's perceptions adjusted. To everyone else, no time had passed, the enemy's hands were still completing the final seal of his jutsu, Sakura was still running toward them, the battlefield looked exactly as it had at the moment of his departure. But Naruto was profoundly changed. The traveler, the enemy ninja was saying, eyes wide with shock as his jutsu connected not with the expected result but with something far more powerful than he had anticipated. Light blazed from Naruto's body, not the Nine-Tails chakra but something more fundamental, more primordial. The enemy stumbled backward, shielding his eyes from the radiance. "That's impossible," he gasped. "You can't be," the legend said. "Yeah," Naruto interrupted with a grin that combined Uzumaki confidence with cosmic knowing. "I get that a lot these days." With casual ease, he extended his hand. Light flowed forth, not to attack but to reveal, showing the true nature of the enemy's jutsu, the connections it had attempted to manipulate, the gateway it had inadvertently opened. Dimensional transit, Naruto identified. Crude but effective. You were trying to pull something through from another realm. His eyes narrowed slightly. Something dangerous. The power we need, the ninja insisted desperately. To reshape the world, to establish true peace through, been there, tried that, Naruto cut him off. Doesn't work. Trust me on this one. With a gesture that combined chakra technique with his new awareness of cosmic connections, Naruto dismantled the dimensional jutsu, not by destroying it but by transforming it, converting its purpose from disruption to stability. The enemy collapsed to his knees, his power source severed, his plans unraveled in an instant. Naruto stood over him, glowing with an inner light that was both new and ancient. "Naruto!" Sakura's voice broke through his cosmic awareness, pulling him back to the immediate human connection. She skidded to a halt beside him, medical kit already in hand, expecting to find him injured. Instead, she found herself staring at her teammate wreathed in golden light unlike anything she'd seen before, not the Nine-Tails red chakra, not Sage Mode's natural energy, but something else entirely. "What happened to you?" she asked, medical assessment shifting to stunned confusion. Naruto's light dimmed to a more manageable level as he grinned at her, the same old Naruto smile, somehow both completely familiar and fundamentally changed. "Long story," he said, glancing around at the battlefield where the rest of their team was finishing up with the other enemy ninja. "Like, really long. Multiple weeks in another reality where I kind of became a god long." Sakura stared at him, trying to determine if he'd taken a blow to the head. "But, you've been right here the whole time. You didn't go anywhere." "Time works differently between realms," Naruto explained, then laughed at her expression. "Yeah, that sounds crazy even to me, and I lived through it. Let's round up these guys, complete the mission, and I'll explain on the way home. Or try to, anyway." As they secured the enemy ninja and regrouped with the rest of their team, all of whom noticed something different about Naruto but couldn't quite identify what had changed, he found himself thinking about the balance he would need to maintain going forward. Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha. The first light of creation. Not two separate identities at war, but an integrated whole, each aspect enriching the other. He had responsibilities in this world, to his friends, to his village, to his dream of becoming Hokage. Those hadn't changed. But he also had cosmic responsibilities now, maintaining the new balance, fostering connection between realms, preventing the isolation that had led to conflict in the first place. And he had personal connections that transcended worlds, golden eyes that would be watching for his return, divine allies who had become family, a cat goddess who had claimed him across dimensions. As they started the journey back to Konoha, Naruto gazed up at the sun overhead, seeing it not just as a star but as a manifestation of light that connected to everything else in existence. Somewhere beyond that light, Ra was guiding his son Bark through the heavens of another world. Somewhere beyond physical perception, Apophis and the void existed in balanced relationship with creation rather than opposition. And at the crossroads of being, the transformed source continued its work, connecting all realms, all possibilities, all moments in a network of relationship that could now evolve rather than reset. Naruto smiled to himself as he fell into step beside his teammates, already planning how to explain cosmic transformation to people whose worldview didn't yet include Egyptian deities or primordial light. Some stories were too big for a single telling. Some journeys continued even after returning home. Some transformations weren't endings but beginnings. The first light had returned, not to reset creation but to evolve it. Naruto Uzumaki had gone from orphan troublemaker to divine nexus without losing his essential self. Both journeys continued, integrated rather than separate. And somewhere between human and divine, between ninja and cosmic force, between Konoha and Egypt, Naruto had found a truth worth protecting across all realms and all times. Connection was the purpose. Relationship was the goal. Love, human, divine, and everything in between, was what made existence worth continuing rather than resetting. As Konoha appeared on the horizon, Naruto felt the light within him respond to the sight of home. Not diminishing his cosmic awareness but enhancing his human connection. Not choosing between worlds but embracing both. Good to be back, he said simply, both to his companions and to himself. And somewhere across the cosmos, in a garden beside the Nile, a cat goddess smiled as if she had heard him. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.